You are watching The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, your escape to reality.
Jay.
Yeah?
You're live.
Hi. All right, we got a lot to talk about today.
Why don't you put your headphones on?
The first thing we got to talk about
I gotta zoom out your camera.
is this TikTok. Congress is talking to the CEO of TikTok, who is from Singapore, and they were asking, "Wow, that's wow." So yeah, they're talking to the CEO of Singapore. They're grilling him. Did you see it, Ian?
Oh, the one where they're like, "What part of China is Singapore?"
Yeah. Oh my God.
Did you ever see that? Did you ever watch King of the Hill?
Yeah.
So let me see if I can pull it up, because it's like, are you Chinese or Japanese? Like, that's like such a King of the Hill moment. King of the Hill, Chinese or Japanese? Hold on, let me bring this up since we're. Hold on. Whoop. Screen share time. Where's the screen share button? Screen share discussion. Whoops. But oh yeah, don't look at that. That's for later.
Yeah, that's not. Don't
Don't need to.
Or Japanese?
I live in California.
Okay.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
I live in California last 20 years, but first come from Laos.
Huh?
Laos.
Huh?
We lay ocean.
The ocean? What ocean?
We all lay ocean. From Laos, stupid. It's a landlocked country in Southeast Asia. It's
Right.
between Vietnam and Thailand, okay? Population 4.7 million.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
It's basically what happened.
Yeah. So I'm not going to pretend to understand all the extraordinary details in this, but it is an interesting situation that's happening, right? So we have an app that was originally it was originally created in China.
Well,
Why does the Chinese government have some type of stake in this? What is the deal with that?
I forget what is the one called in China? It's called something. It's like Douyin or something.
Yeah, it's not
Or is it-
BitDance. It's a different company.
But originally it was Musically
Mhm.
was TikTok, and then I think they bought them, and then there's like the TikTok version that is American facing, and then there's the Chinese version, which is like obviously in China.
Yeah.
Um,
So the real question here, though, is
yeah.
is this app a danger to, number one, to the U.S. government, and number two,
Right.
is it collecting an abnormal or unacceptable level of user information.
Especially as compared to other social media that already exists.
Yeah, and I've read conflicting reports, not to be surprised by that. I've read some experts said they looked at the code base and it's not collecting any more or less than any of the other apps out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what data can they collect? I was very interested to know, like, what can they actually collect? It's not like it's, from what I've read, it's not going through your phone and, gaining access to your Google Docs and taking information like that. Although, I would think that wouldn't be difficult for an app to do, depending on, what level of access it has. So right now, what we have is pretty much a nothing burger. We don't have enough information to really draw a conclusion about what information they're gathering, which I think is at the core of it. That's probably one of the most, if not the most important part of this whole story. The second thing is, does the Chinese government have access to the data, and can they use it, and for what purposes? Particularly for people in the U.S. government, I don't know. Like, I know our phones track where we are, know exactly where we are at all times, and if that data is accessible, I could see how that could be bad. Someone says, in terms of TikTok and its relative danger, I think we've been having the wrong convo about it. What convo do you think we should be having?
Hit us up. It's not about data collection. It's about influencing who sees what. I mean, that's
that was the other
true
part
of every platform, though.
Yeah, one of the senators said to the CEO, in China, they're showing children videos about education and things like that, the positive information. In the United States, the algorithm is absolutely not what I would consider. I don't think any social media platform has an algorithm that would be considered above boards. We have to keep in mind, these are businesses. These are people who are actively trying to make money off of the property that they own and the people that are using their property.
So ByteDance is the company. Douyin, Douyin, is the sister app. That is the TikTok sister in China.
Yep.
Just for people to know. Yeah, I mean, it seems like, one I would to push back is like, I'm pretty sure if there are any claims of political interference, like, wasn't Facebook kind of responsible for a lot of that, like, about 8 years ago? Isn't that like the claim that Facebook kind of radicalized a bunch of people? So I don't know if that alone is the problem. But apparently Facebook and all the other social medias are also, certainly limiting political speech comment or comments and commentary and content. So
I think it brings up an ongoing, definitely not new, broader topic of just social media. What influence does social media have? What are the intent of these companies? And I think, if we take one half-inch step back to look at this, it becomes crystal clear. Like, these companies are out to make money.
Yeah.
That's it. These are not altruistic ventures. Look at what Elon Musk did with Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous to think that anybody that has control over one of these social media platforms is, there's different degrees, of course, but these are ways to make money, ways to spread influence. So, I would think in general, we need to be looking at all social media. Like, yes, TikTok is on the list. I wouldn't say that they're extraordinarily more dangerous than all the others at this point with the information that we have. I mean, of course, if they were sharing information with the Chinese government, if that ever comes out, that was compromising U.S. security in any way, yeah, of course. And let me tell you, we absolutely cannot put it past any country, including our own, to do that exact thing.
Well, I think, it almost seems like if China wanted to buy the information, they could, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't see us really regulating Facebook or any of the other ones to say, don't give this information to foreign agencies. Like, I think we just assume that we're not doing that, but I doubt that we're actually, because money walks and...
Yeah, I agree. This person, Claudia, she said, or he said, Facebook, it's easy to get censored on Facebook. I was censored on Facebook last week.
Oh, yeah.
They don't give you any freaking information. It's like they basically say, we've taken some of your content down and go suck it. That's basically it. They don't want a discussion with you. As a matter of fact, you try calling someone at Facebook. Just try. You will not get anybody on the phone at Facebook.
Yeah,
Like-
YouTube is the same. I think you have to just like shame them on Twitter,
Yep.
and even that is kind of like Twitter's such a rat hole now. It's like it doesn't matter. I'm more concerned with the TikTok are not propaganda spread. Sorry. Yeah, there's the little pop up.
So somebody said, it's a hypothetical danger versus actual danger.
Yeah.
So, okay, but let's talk about the hypothetical danger. Like, we know that, and again, I'm an American. I consume American news for the most part. I mean, I do read news from other countries as well, but for them, I have an American mindset here. We know that foreign powers have been influencing U.S. elections. It's been happening for a long time, and it's largely happening through social media. We know that that's happening, and it's not only not appropriate. Like no government should be influencing another government's elections, but it's dangerous. It's depending on what side of the fence you're on. I mean, I think most people know what side of the fence I'm on politically, but we have a real threat to democracy in the
We
United
just got
States.
smacked with a U.S. elections tag because we're talking about elections from TikTok.
Whatever, who cares? But we have to maintain our critical thinking skills, particularly when we're faced with beliefs that we might have about something like a political party or a football team, right? You have to kind of keep yourself in check, do a freaking reality check, and try to have your critical thinking part of your brain be the thing that's driving, and not your loyalty to some group or some other group. I think it's a good line of reasoning to say that you won't really belong to any group. Like why assign yourself loyalty to a group, whatever it is, where you don't have total control over what the group says is true and false and all that stuff. I mean, I would never do that. I would never give a political party any power over me, give them any of my loyalty. My God, my loyalty is so thinly rationed out to people who absolutely deserve it. My God, would I give it to a fucking political party? Never. Never. You know what? Think about it, though.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if they're the ones that are saying they're going to be like this is like the most important election and you got to vote for us because this is like the one that counts. It's like, okay, well then make it count or shut up. It's like, I'm not going to ascribe to that blue no matter who kind of thing if you're not doing anything. If you're just going to be like milquetoast.
Someone said if TikTok was owned by Russia instead of China, would that change your opinion? Well,
Probably.
I mean, first of all,
But
apparently TikTok is not owned by China. Like legally, it's not. It's not controlled and owned by China, as far as we know, right? But it wouldn't change my opinion on TikTok because, if there's a possibility here that this piece of software is owned by a country that my country isn't currently in good standing with, I would be very, concerned about that. Definitely. I mean, we know that people are using social media to do these things, so why not? I mean, I have deeply studied, along with Ian, we've deeply studied the TikTok algorithm and how it behaves and what it does, and we've talked about it a lot. And I have to admit, I don't think that the TikTok algorithm is like, I don't think it's safe for kids, and I don't think it's quote unquote healthy. I don't think it's positive. I think first of all, let's just face it. TikTok in the United States is complete garbage. It is completely littered with horrible content and misinformation. Yeah, you can find good content. Of course you can. You always can on any platform. You can find totally legit content. But the vast majority of the content, number one, it's just absolute nonsense absurdity, right?
And it's amazing how many people like it and comment on it too. Because
Yeah.
it's like, it seems like it should be such a fringe thing, but it's like, okay, what are these people's feeds like? Their feeds must be demonic. Because I get a lot of like, I have to make a separate TikTok account just to get the crazy stuff because it's now tailored to my likes. So now I get like food videos and cat videos
Yeah.
on the SGU TikTok because I'm perusing it. But it's like, yeah, they must have some. There's a lot of people out there, or it's fake, like likes and views. But
Who knows? That's the other thing. We'll never know. With any social media company, you don't know any of that. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't trust any of that. So the idea is, like, let me summarize like my use.
Go
You
ahead.
do the same thing, Ian. Like, I'll summarize my use of TikTok.
yeah.
I'll summarize like what my takeaway is, and it has been utterly a waste of time.
yeah,
Largely because it doesn't ever introduce me to new thoughts and ideas. With one takeaway, there was this one Asian philosopher, like a Buddhist monk who I've been listening to, that I think is interesting, and it's all very good advice, I think, on how to think and manage your life. But that is like, out of all the noise, that was like the one thing I'm like, okay, this was a cool find or whatever. But I mean, it's all garbage. I mean, if you start watching, like, for example, I made the freaking mistake of looking up a Fortnite video.
yeah. Oh well, yeah, that's the problem. Yeah,
I just wanted to get some information about the game. My son and I play Fortnite. I mean, every other video now that comes up on TikTok is about Fortnite, and I can't stop it.
yeah.
I don't even know how to like steer it away from that. Like, I have
Yeah.
no control over my feed.
made
And
a
that is a huge giveaway. The fact that we can't direct our feed in any way on any of these platforms that I know of. I mean, maybe there's some minor ways that you can do it, but like, let's say in TikTok right now, I just want to go in there and boom, I want to be like, stop showing me Fortnite videos. Like, what? You can't do any of this shit. And if you can, it's buried.
Yeah, I think there is like there is some stuff to like dislike it and all that, but even still, I don't think it really pays attention to it. It seems like once you get into the funnel, you kind of
You're stuck.
fall down.
You're
it.
stuck,
Yeah,
man.
You can hide. Oh, that was funny.
What? I had a cowboy
They
hat.
put
on
a
something?
cowboy. Yeah, somebody sent a cowboy hat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You
Yeah.
gotta search for other stuff. Yeah, it is like it's purely additive. It does seem there's no subtractive element to the algorithm. So, because Fortnite also is such a big popular topic, it will fill up your feed because there's so much content. So you got to just like overwhelm it with other search terms.
Yeah.
A couple people were saying like in the chat, it's like my TikTok usually gets like flat earther stuff, but I want that for future videos of my own. There's like you get what you interact with. My feed is full of amazing educational and entertaining information. It's true. It can be. I think there's a lot of great stuff out there. It's just there is so much nonsense and that
So, for example, though, like someone said, yeah, and I know this, you can hold down
not interested. Yeah.
and do the non-interest. It doesn't work for me. I've done it. And, I am mildly interested in some Fortnite videos. I don't want it to be every other freaking video, though. I have tons of interests. And it's somehow like,
Oh, there's a refresh feed for your TikTok? I didn't know that there was a refresh
yeah,
feed.
where is that?
Yeah, where is that?
Where's that?
Refresh feed TikTok. How do we do that? Okay, content preferences. In the TikTok app, tap on profile at the bottom, tap menu button at the top, tap settings and privacy.
Okay, I'm
Wait
doing
for-
it. Go
wait for
ahead.
Jay to get there. And then tap content preferences.
Okay.
And then tap refresh for you feed. And there's an instructional video.
Okay, what
think
want
I'll
a
read
fresh
about that.
start will show you popular videos to launch your new feed. The more you interact, the more personalized your feed will be. Well, that's exactly what happened. So yeah, I mean, you could do a refresh, but it's going to funnel me back in to all this
We'll see.
crap.
Yeah, we'll see. There's a lot of traffic. Yeah.
I mean, look, it's nice that those things are
It's true,
there,
everything.
and I've tried to do this, Bottom line is, we still are dealing with a glut of bad information, and it's not going away. It's getting worse. And, and over the years, how people's attention spans have gotten shorter, because of cell phone and screen use.
Yeah.
And TikTok is very representative of that because TikTok, it's like, it's got like the profile setting, it's not a widescreen like YouTube. It's set up in a way where it's optimized to be used on a phone.
Right.
And it just, in my opinion, that, most of it is like just worthless, like there's this guy, there's one thing I like, right? There's one guy, he's the 40-year-old guy that like says, he finds something that could possibly like be like a fun thing to know how to do. Like he shows you how to boil an egg, and he shows you how to do all these different weird tricks and different things that can come up in your life, like all sorts of whatever it is. Like those are fun and entertaining, but I'm not walking away with like anything truly positive.
Yeah.
And that is why we're here, though. I mean, the reason why we make the videos that we're making is I'm hoping that we can get in front of some people, make them aware. Like this discussion is great. Like all of us have learned that there's a few things that we could do on TikTok that might help, purge some of this crap. I would really like it if they gave me a list of whatever folders that I'm in, like here's all the categories that you're now assigned to that you're going to get in your feed. And I wish I could just kind of like detune them or swipe and delete certain ones and all that.
Yeah. Probably gives away the algorithm a little more than they want, of course. But
Yeah,
that's like
but-
part of the thing. Should they be forced to give up what the algorithm is?
So we got to,
that's all I'm
as
trying to say.
as a good rule of thumb with social media, be careful with what data you put on there. Reddit lets you have all these different accounts, and they let you sweep through those different accounts very easily. If you don't want one account to be associated with certain browsing that you're going to be doing, and there's a lot of reasons why. I see a lot of people on Reddit, for example, that like create a throwaway account because they don't want their partner to find out that they're asking for advice about how to leave the relationship. I mean, it's good. It's good though. People need help, and Reddit, for how good or bad it is, like I see a lot of positive community stuff happening on there.
Yeah.
But there's a shitload of misinformation on there
Oh
too.
God, Reddit is really bad sometimes. I don't know. There's only recently been removal of like some how do I say this without saying the word? What's prawn of a past relationship that you obtained and then posted on the internet of your significant other, you know what I mean? Like that. They only recently like kind of took that stuff down, so Reddit is kind of a libertarian wasteland.
But the thing is though with Reddit is you could pick what subs you want to digest.
True. That's true.
And I vet the subs. Like, I've dropped subs because I think they suck and they're badly moderated or they're just crappy content.
Yeah.
I moderate the SGUs, Reddit, sub. The moderation ability is great. It gives people, control over, what's on their, what's on that sub. So whatever. I think there's more control in the
So
community.
you're saying you don't like free speech, huh? I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I do like free speech. I do like it.
Well, we're no longer talking about the smes smelections, so the tag is no longer there on
Oh, that's
the
good.
TikTok. So we could go to some of the real important stuff of the day if you want to move on to the next discussion,
Yeah, let's do it.
which is, of course, this one right here. Here we go. Let me full screen it. I mean, what is happening with Kate Middleton? Am I right? The controversy that's shocked the world
So,
and a nation.
Ian, let me interview you if you don't mind.
Please.
So, remind me
Who this person is?
Remind me first about why I would even in a million years give a shit about any of this. Like, I don't get it. Like,
Because she's our princess. Well, I guess that was Princess Diana. She's like what people want to have Princess Diana back, so they want another princess.
all right. I mean, I get that in
Pass. Pancakes.
I guess that if you buy into that, right, like this is part of your culture or whatever, that you would have some interest or whatever. But like, even still,
But
like,
yeah.
come on.
But so there's, obviously there's loyalists and people or royalists, I guess, in England who are like really into the crown and all that nonsense. I'm not particularly fond of them, but I think it's a kind of an American thing too, to be like obsessed with,
Famous people.
Well, and royalty specifically, since we don't have a king or queen. It's like, oh, it's such like an old world kind of thing. So there were a couple things like this photo apparently was edited, but the one that really popped out was this one. And specifically, there are some editing artifacts here. With,
Okay, so what did
let
she
me
edit?
open it.
Kids' hands?
So yeah, so the zipper kind of disappears at one point.
Okay.
Her hair is like kind of soft, erased away or something to that effect. The skirt, I guess, doesn't connect correctly, and also this is the most glaring one on the bottom right, which is like the wrist disappears. Right. So like, hold on.
Whose wrist?
The child's wrist, the daughter. So look at the right here. See how it's like edited there? You can see a little bit of the
Yeah, it's like
the thing. Oh wait, you can't see my mouse highlighting it. Let me just.
I see it.
Okay, yeah, you see it,
But in the end, like, okay, so she photoshopped this image for some reason. She did a terrible job. I mean, anybody that uses Photoshop will look at that and be like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
But the point is, again, she photoshops the image. You know, I photoshopped images of my kids for this reason or that reason. Yeah. Does it really matter? Does it mean anything? Like they're
okay. So this part gets to the grander conspiracy, which I think is what's important to diagnose, like that it is like it's not a psychosis, but it's like part of that mindset is that she hasn't been seen for several months. This is an old photo. It's not a brand new photo. Everyone's clamoring about why hasn't she been seen? Apparently she had some sort of abdominal surgery recently. And so that it quote unquote welcomes the conspiracy about she is being hidden away. She's being disappeared.
Yeah.
She's, I don't know, lizard, whatever. Yeah. Like the typical things about the royals.
Somebody said that she probably got a facelift. I mean, yeah, that's all.
Oh, that's a good point. They often get like plastic surgery, but then they don't like to talk about it. Cause obviously it's like,
Yeah.
it's personal, and it's also like they have to keep up appearances to some degree. So let's watch this one. This recently came out, and the claim is that this is her, which, I mean, in my opinion, it's her. But the people are saying that it's not. And here, this person suggests that they have proof. So here we go. That's Prince William, supposedly, which it looks like. Okay. And that, I mean, it's a grainy photo. This person used like an AI enhancement thing. But the thing is with the AI enhancement, it's just assuming what the person looks like. So of course it's not going to like exactly match what she looks like, right? Because look there, and then it just kind of changes her features.
Is it her? I wouldn't even be able to recognize her. Is it her or not?
I mean, that doesn't look like her if you look at like this photo.
So it's somebody else.
So but it's the AI interpolating who it is, right? Oh, Steve is just in time for us to discuss the most pressing matter. Where is Kate Middleton?
So the takeaway here is you play this stupid creepy music on TikTok, which I've heard a million times.
Yes, this music.
There's no fucking conspiracy. Right. She's doing something. She wants privacy. It could be a health concern. It could be plastic surgery. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And there's no conspiracy. There is no like. What do they think? They have like body duplicates of all these
body doubles, which brings me to this point.
Okay.
Everybody remember this?
Spectacular stunt, my friends. But all for naught. Turn around, please. Ah, what a pity. What a pity. So, Princess, you thought you could outwit the imperious forces? You idiots! These are not them. You've captured their stunt doubles. Search the area.
Come on. No? Anybody?
That movie is so bad.
What?
So bad.
It really is terrible.
That's blasphemy.
No, it
I'm
really
ending the stream.
it didn't hold up, man.
Spaceballs doesn't hold up?
No, it didn't hold up.
That's crazy.
I remember when I watched it originally, I laughed once.
That's great. That is
One time
criminal.
at Bartholomew.
That's it.
That was
all
it.
right, Bartholomew is funny, but
That was the
come
only funny
on.
one.
Nah, it just didn't land.
It
man.
didn't land. It didn't
It's
land.
got to be a generational thing because I think that's like I grew up on that, so it must just be nostalgia for me.
But let's get back to the
AQ6. We're gonna review it.
let's get back to this. We're not talking about this topic because of the actual topic itself, like the royalty. We're talking about it because the absurdity of what the internet does and this conspiracy theory engine, like the push so hard to find conspiracy in every single thing. What's at stake here? What are the stakes? Like if you're a person that thinks that they have a body double and she's dead, whatever, like you have no proof, so it doesn't matter. It's pointless. Like it's not even worth talking about. And disappearing zippers and shit Photoshop skills doesn't mean a goddamn thing. Doesn't mean anything. There's nothing tangible to get out of it that's worth even discussing. And but yet, you know, like, damn, are people that bored?
Yeah, I think that's basically
That's the
what it
problem.
is.
Why, you know, what the fuck, man? There's so many goddamn things to do with your time. I've said this before. Oh my God, the world is so full of things to do. And some of my favorite things to do cost no money. I like hanging out with my friends and playing tabletop games, you know. Steve does too. Like, it costs nothing. Well, you know, the books are expensive, but you can get all this shit for free online if you try hard enough.
It can be inexpensive. It could be expensive too. If
Once you buy it, you got it. But the point is, like, people that spend their time hunting for conspiracies are going to find them.
they need a hobby.
Yeah.
They need it. They need it.
This is the hobby. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
I know the
this
thing
is
is,
it.
they need a hobby.
They need a
that-
better hobby.
I think the problem is when people confuse their entertainment for reality.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
But it's kind of mind blowing because we get, in a way, we have a way to examine our culture in a way right now that we've never had the depth of before. We could see into people's lives. We could see what people spend their time on. We could see what people care about. We could see what people like, what they had for fucking dinner. All this stuff, like it's all noise. We didn't have it 30 years ago, and we don't. I didn't miss not having it then. I don't like having it now. Like, I could care less what people like. When people take pictures of their food, I'm always like, my hair gets blown back. Like, what the hell? If you're not a food blogger and they're talking about the recipe, I mean, why? Anyway, you know, that's another rabbit hole. But the bottom line is, the internet, as Bob likes to say all the time, it's for porn. That's the number one use of the internet.
prawn.
For prawn.
He said prawn.
And beyond that, you know, like, it's become this congested, like, fucking beef stew of garbage. That's really what it is. And, like, there's tiny little islands of sanity, you know, like, okay, so I've talked to Rob Palmer, who's part of GSOW, you know, the people who work on Wikipedia, right?
Yeah.
And these are all critical thinkers that are, you know, helping clean up a lot of pages. And they're getting totally smacked right now by the UAP believers.
Yeah.
Because they've been editing Wikipedia to represent reality, to say, yeah, like, this is the government report that came out. You know, they're putting up real information. They're getting basically, you know.
Let's talk about the Pentagon report for a second.
Yeah.
We talked about it on the show.
Sure.
But it is interesting, you know, I like thinking about, like, what do we really make of the fact that the Pentagon put out a report? Basically, you know, it amounts to the government saying the government's not hiding information.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
Which I get. I get that. I
I
totally get
the
that people are like,
internal inconsistency of that. But and somebody just emailed us, and we had a brief back and forth about it. It's like, yeah, but you can't believe what the Pentagon says. It's like, okay, but let's dive a little bit deeper. That's a bit of a superficial, I think, dismissiveness of the report. There's a lot of details in the report, first of all, that are very interesting.
Yes.
But if we're just looking at the big picture, I think at the end of the day, what the Pentagon report does is it eliminates the, like, sort of the middle ground. Like, there's only two viable narratives now. Either you accept the report at face value,
Yep.
right, which means that the government has no contact with aliens, right? There's no, you know, secret, you know, crashed flying saucers. There's no alien bodies. They're not reverse engineering alien technology. There's no shadow government, you know, hiding all this information, right? There's no secret stuff.
there's no lizard people running the government.
So either you have to accept that, or you have to deepen the conspiracy,
Yes.
right? There's no soft conspiracy option anymore. You can't dismiss it as, well, you know, this is the Department of Defense. They're used to keeping secrets, right? Or the intelligence, like the CIA keeps secrets, right? So, okay, to some extent, of course, there are elements of the government that require classified information,
Of course, no.
sensitive information. We know
Yep.
that they don't, you know, reveal all of the stuff.
Of course
that they're
not.
really-
We have
that they're
spies
really
all over the
going on.
world. You know, every government,
Right.
Every government that has enough money to have spies
Yeah,
has
has
spies.
but the other layer to that, though, is, all right, so we know that there's classified information. We get that. But there's supposed to be congressional oversight,
Yes.
right? the way the United States government is set up anyway. I mean, if you were living in a totalitarian government, you could, yes, sure, you could believe that they would hide anything from you because it's literally one guy with total control. But that's not the way the U.S. government works, right? At least not on paper. Right?
Or not yet. Let's see what happens
so,
in November.
So this was the Pentagon reporting to Congress, who asked for this report and is, basically wants total transparency to make sure that Congress is getting all the information that they are supposed to get so that they can do their oversight. So, and I did have this conversation with somebody who did, work within the government and saying that, well, yes, there is congressional oversight, but, the Defense Department and intelligence agencies have ways of, hiding things even from Congress. But they're not talking about a 50-year secret program that would, on the level of like we're hiding that aliens exist, right? They're just talking about like they're procuring money for one thing and maybe they're doing stuff with it that they're not being totally transparent about, whatever.
But if the United States government had alien technology,
Why is this pulling back?
and if we've had it for 50 years or even 30 years or whatever, I think we'd know by now. Like, what do you think?
Well, this is the point is that you have to, with the Pentagon report, you either have to just agree that the government doesn't have any contact with aliens, or that not just you can no longer explain this as the normal operation of the Department of Defense or the intelligence community. You have to say that there's literally an illegal shadow government operating within the United States government that is hiding itself even from Congress, is really an illegal secret government. That's the level now you have to get to in order to say, you can't just say, well, the Pentagon lies.
Yep.
That doesn't cover it anymore.
It's been
That
polarized.
doesn't cover it.
We're polarized
Yeah.
now. Like, you either are, believing in something that's based on reality, or you're believing in a freaking fantasy at this point. And again, I encourage governments to keep their secrets and do what they got to do. That's the way that they survive, right?
Well, there's got to be a process, right?
Yeah.
Again, like obviously, we don't want our state's secrets to be made public. It's always a dilemma. Yeah, and I even just wrote about this in a slightly different context on Science-Based Medicine today. About, we're right now the Supreme Court's hearing a case where people, essentially argued that the White House, the government tried to exert undue influence over social media in order to suppress free speech, right? But they're talking about,
Give me a break.
removing misinformation about COVID and vaccines, et cetera. And, it gets down to a lot of details about how much did Meta or whatever ask the government for guidance on what counts as misinformation, and versus how much did the government suggest that they should maybe remove this, versus pressure versus coerce. Like, where's the line?
Yeah, I agree, though.
Where they
we need
step
to
over
define
the
that.
line.
We need to.
Sure. And I get it. I mean, obviously, we don't want healthcare misinformation on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's fine to use experts to identify clear-cut, blatant misinformation and say, well, maybe we shouldn't be spreading this. The algorithms shouldn't be promoting this blatant healthcare misinformation that is demonstrably wrong.
But they're
not a matter of opinion, not a matter of political ideology. This is just factually incorrect.
Yeah, but there's a lot of political information that is factually incorrect.
But do we really want the government to have the ability to control the narrative to that extent?
Understood.
Because it's like when you give the government, like you say, we want the government to keep their secrets, to keep us safe, right? So that's what it comes down to. When you want to give the government the power to do stuff to keep us safe, you're also giving them the power to oppress us.
Yeah.
And those two things kind of go hand in hand.
I agree with you, Steve, because again, in the United States, we vacillate from one party to the next, and from every president's different. Read between the lines. So would you want the current president to have that power?
Yeah.
Would you want
every president?
president
you have to
have
imagine
that power?
the opposite of your political spectrum having that.
But there's an
power.
easy solution, man. It's like you just get an independent body. We set it up where you have right.
It's conceptually simple. I wouldn't say it's easy, but yes. But that's where checks and balances comes in, right? That's where we say, okay, will give the government a lot of power, but it can't all be focused in one person or one small group of people.
Yeah, that's why we have
There's
departments.
got to be oversight and transparency, at least internally.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's the way our government is set up. So again, you have to believe, if you think at this point, if you think the government's hiding information about aliens or UFOs or whatever, then you have to believe that our government, it does not work the way the Constitution says it does, right? That it's illegal. We have an illegitimate, illegal shadow government really running things.
And I feel the need to throw this out there.
Yeah.
Because any critical thinker, I hope, would agree with this sentiment. If real proof came out
Yeah.
that the government was doing that, was hiding it, there was a cover-up and everything, I would believe it.
Yeah.
Of course, the evidence would have to be very watertight. It would have to be
You have to
powerful.
be equal to the claim
But-
being made. And again, some of the feedback we got was, do you have faith in the Pentagon? It's like, first of all, no, right? So our opinions about whether or not there are aliens visiting the Earth, or there have been any encounters with UFOs or UAPs or what they are, or alien bodies, whatever, is not dependent on any information from the government, right? We have, for decades, been following the whole UFO phenomenon and examining whatever evidence we found worthy of our time and attention, or anything that people bring before us, or we say, give us your best evidence, give us your best claims. We examine it all individually and collectively as the skeptical movement. And I also, read the analysis and the firsthand, investigations of my fellow skeptics, et cetera. We've been, following this massively over decades. There's basically no credible evidence. None. At the end of the day, there isn't one piece of even mildly interesting evidence, let alone compelling
And
or convincing.
I would like, in a way, I would be scared if aliens were visiting us. I think it's an intimidating proposition. But
whatever the,
whatever
truth
the
is
evidence
what
showed,
we would
yeah,
want to know.
that's
right? We
it.
would want to believe whatever the truth is. We want to know that individually, as just interested, science nerds, but also as science communicators. That's our job, right? Not to take any one narrative or any one side, but to take the truth, right? To say what we honestly think is true. And that's the case here. And not only is it that there's no evidence that there's aliens, there's really good evidence that this is a psychocultural phenomenon, right? There's really good evidence that this is just a neurological, psychological, cultural thing that's happening.
Yep.
Not anything real. Yeah, and so, like when you understand how people misperceive things, and how optical illusions, and how memory works, and how memory can be contaminated, and how conspiracy thinking works, and how what the rules of evidence are, and the logical heuristic and pitfalls that people fall into, it's like the belief in aliens fits nicely into what we understand about neurology and psychology. It doesn't fit into a real phenomenon that's happening out there in the world, right?
Yep.
Because there's, again, the utter lack of any evidence. We also study things like, mass delusions and just mythology, belief systems. Belief systems take on a life of their own. And when they do, they follow certain formats, right? They follow certain
Patterns that
yeah.
repeat over and over
and
again.
we can see this has all the fingerprints of mythology, of a cultural belief system on it, not the fingerprints of a government cover-up or of something real happening. And so, when you do a really deep analysis, like the skeptical community has collectively done, the answer becomes really obvious, and the Pentagon saying, "Oh yeah, we're not covering up aliens." We're not like, "Oh, this is now the basis of my opinion." It's like, no, it's like, really, you're about 20 years late on that conclusion. You could have and should have said that 20 years or 30
of course,
years ago.
yeah.
or
What the
whatever.
hell, right?
Right? They're late to the party as far as we're concerned. And we could even nitpick like the way that they're presenting and discussing their finds. It's not like we're just having faith in the Pentagon. That's not what's happening here.
And again, I'll circle all this back to social media in general. I mean, there was an explosion of misinformation and disinformation that came into all of our realities with the propagation of social media. Social media, on my opinion, social media in general has been an incredibly negative influence on reality, and it's helped misinformation explode. And we are about to live in a world where anybody can create any image they want, anybody can create any video they want, we are not going to know what the fucking truth is anymore, because we're going to be, everything that we see and hear has to be questioned in a way that has never happened ever before in the history of
Well,
mankind.
I think it's going to be harder, and this is, but I don't think this is fundamentally different than the way things have been. I think it's just a continuation of a very long-term trend. You can go back to the printing press, if you're going to talk.
I know,
about
but
this.
Steve, this is much more
But what it
pervasive
means,
than anything else.
What it means is that we need to have critical thinking skills.
And
not
that's the
just
problem.
not just a general skeptical outlook, but real skills. Like you need to have an ability to sift through information and determine, what's real and what isn't real,
Okay.
what's reliable and what isn't reliable.
Let's
And
put a
that's-
pin right there.
That is not easy to do.
Let's talk about what you just did horizontally.
Yeah.
Okay, right. What I mean is, let's stay here and now. Let's
okay.
not push the discussion forward. I want to talk about what Steve just said.
Okay.
I totally agree with you, Steve. I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. But let's plop the United States in front of us and talk
Yeah.
about the people that we have here in this country.
Yeah.
Do you think that anybody from a particular political party is going to find this need to suddenly learn how to think critically? No, it's never going to happen.
Don't say never.
It's not going to happen in the short term.
Well, yeah.
It's not. We've made basically no headway of inserting critical thinking skills into general education.
Well, listen, societies go through this, and different societies are different in their their general amount of skill and experience. Thinking critically about stuff. Like so, for example, when the Soviet Union collapsed, there was a brief period, where there was an opening up of information to the people living in Russia, let's say, and they were flooded with belief in pseudoscience because they didn't. Their information was controlled for so long
that they have no skills.
that they didn't develop the skills. They weren't consumers. They didn't know how to look at a commercial and realize that this is a company trying to sell me a product, and these are all the ways in which companies try to deceive you, right? So when you come from a capitalistic society where you're how many commercials do you think you view in a day, or ads? If
Yeah,
you're going
ton.
online or
Yeah.
whatever. It's constant. So we have a lot of filters in place. We've developed a cultural skill and cultural knowledge. That doesn't mean that people don't get influenced
Yeah,
or
but-
deceived,
but-
but just we have a much higher baseline skill level than somebody from a country
Okay.
where the information's all throttled and
I
and
get
locked
that,
down.
Steve. But let's continue to look at the people from the United States with their enhanced skills that they've learned from
Yeah.
social media. Look what just fucking happened.
Well, I'm just saying.
Wait, let me finish my point. We
You're missing my point, but go ahead.
I know I got your point. I get it. I know that if that meter, it's going to go up when social media gets crazier and people need these skills, that the general skills will go up. My point is this: one, it's needed to go up drastically, and very importantly, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse.
What's gotten worse?
We live in a country that is so polarized now from politics and misinformation that there's two realities.
Yeah, but you're
going
looking
on.
at the net effect. What I'm saying is that yes, social media increased the amount of misinformation. out there,
Correct.
no doubt.
I agree.
And so people and advances in digital technology are making it harder to tell deep fakes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But we will adapt. We will adapt. I don't
hope
think we
so.
have yet. We
I hope
need.
so.
We will. To some extent. I'm not saying that it's gonna. Everyone's gonna be a fantastic critical thinker in 10 years. I'm just saying that this is kind of, I think, the way things go over time. Technology creates a new phenomenon, and then eventually things settle back down to baseline.
I hope so, but Steve, it is.
We will see. I mean,
It's
assuming-
orders of magnitude more powerful
Yeah.
than the printing press, right? Yeah, the printing press allowed people to get information to the world, good and
That
bad.
was, you could argue that was even more dramatic. That was like people going from no information to lots of information. That was
Yeah,
a
but that-
fairly dramatic change.
But the negative impact that what we're about to experience, I think, is going to be far greater than anything that humanity's ever dealt with before, including the AI influence, right? Because
Yeah.
the artificial intelligence is allowing these deep fakes to be made in the video and all that stuff. And I think of it like in creative terms, like I've told you I'm working on a screenplay. Man, would I love to turn my scenes into actual video and see it and be able to hone. That's great. There's massive creativity benefits from this.
Yeah.
All creating art and all sorts of stuff. But you get down to just raw misinformation. Like we're going to see a video of both Joe Biden and Donald Trump saying things or even doing things that they didn't do, and we might not know that it's fake. We're going to go, shit, man, is that real? Did he really say that? Because think about what I'm saying. I say that now, knowing that these people have said the things that they're saying. I'm like, my God, did he really say that? You ratchet that up, make it a little bit more weird and crazy. We're not going to know, man. How are we going to know? We're going to watch the video. Then who do we turn to say this actually happened? Or, we won't know. And they'll use it to say things and then say, I didn't say that.
Yeah, right. They'll use it to deny reality.
It's going to be bad. And we are not prepared as a global culture is not prepared for this. I think we need to. This is a very important thing that we all need to talk about and talk to our friends and family about to make sure that they start thinking about it and kind of get themselves ready for what is about to happen to us because we just don't know what it's going to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do. Yeah, I mean, part of my point is there is no substitute for having critical thinking skills, and we're going to need them even more, and we're going to have to continually fine tune them and hone them to keep up with the technology. As somebody said in the chat, it is a bit of an arms race, between creating misinformation and the ability to detect misinformation. I do think that we need to teach the 3 pillars, of reality testing at every levels of public education, and those are scientific literacy, media savvy, and critical thinking skills. Right? We need to teach kids these things. Again, even in adults, this needs to be baked in. This is the most important aspect of education, in my point at this point.
I would add
Because-
a pillar to that. And that's being able to search correctly for prawn, right? Right, Ian?
Yeah, for prawn. Yeah.
I mean,
that
everybody
that
needs
comes
that.
under media savvy.
so much.
That comes
Oh,
under media.
I agree with what Keith Davies says in our chat here. He said critical thinkers will still be critical thinkers. People prone to believe in their own bias will still be gullible. I don't think it will change a lot. I don't think it's going to change a lot. Like I've already started telling my kids what's going on. I have an 11-year-old and I've got an 8-year-old, and I'm telling them, we are entering a part where technology is advancing really fast, and we are not going to be able to tell when we see a video or hear somebody say something, we're not going to be able to trust it, and we're not going to know it's real. And they're going to live in it in a way that I'm not, right? Because they might adapt. I hope they do.
Yeah.
I hope that young people really have the capacity to adapt quickly to this. But we're going to go through like a real provocative phase where we're going to see a lot of cool stuff, and then we're going to be hit with misinformation.
I will admit, we don't really know how culture is going to adapt.
Yeah.
And I see different adaptations, right? What I think is one type of adaptation, which I think is very counterproductive, very unhealthy. Let's call it the TikTok adaptation.
Okay,
right?
let's do that.
What I see on TikTok is a culture forming where there is no reality.
Yeah.
There are no facts. There is no truth. It's all performance. It's all just claims, and everyone has the ability to say or believe or do whatever they want. I don't think a lot of the content creators, because again, we review content all the time to say what is this something we should respond to with a skeptical response.
Yeah.
And so much of it is like, well, what is this? It's like performance. I don't even know that they believe what they're saying.
Yeah.
It's like it just doesn't matter. It's just they've obliterated the line between performance, and entertainment and information. Are they really trying to spread something they believe, or are they saying they believe this to get the clicks and to get the views?
Yeah.
And do they even know anymore? Is that a persona that they're playing, or is that them? You think about the asshole,
Joe Rogan?
Yeah, the other one.
Donald Trump?
RFK Jr.
The Sandy Hook guy.
Oh, fucking
Alex
Infowars.
Jones.
Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Thank you. Think of Alex Jones. I don't believe for 1 second that the public persona Alex Jones is really that guy. And he said so in court. That's just a persona that I play. That is, you know what I mean? And if anyone, it's in for entertainment, and nobody should actually believe anything that I say. It's basically what his defense, against, committing slander. And
That was legitimately the only cogent thing that guy's ever said.
yeah, I mean, and just, a guy from all the con artists that I've seen over my career, everything that we've dealt with, I look at that guy, I'm like, he doesn't believe what he's saying for a hot second. That is 100% performance.
Yep.
I mean, he doesn't necessarily disbelieve anything that he's saying. I think that he that's the difference between lying and bullshitting. Bullshitting, lying is you know what you're saying is false, right? You're trying to deceive people, whereas bullshitting is you don't care if it's true or not.
Yeah.
The truth is irrelevant. And I think that's where Alex Jones lives. And he's shown that formula and how that can work. You create a persona that's not real. It's meant entirely for engagement, entertainment value and getting people interested. You attach it to some worldview narrative, and then you sell stuff. You sell snake oil on the side. That's the hustle, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we weren't
That's all of TikTok.
if we were
basically.
just some rando podcast, we weren't critical thinkers and everything, we would be hawking product. I mean, it's a great way to make money.
Yeah.
You know,
Skeptical supplements? Come on. It's already there.
yeah, they're coming. Just wait a couple
Come on,
weeks.
just come on, guys.
Right.
So overall,
Mega brain.
we are at the precipice of a potentially very dangerous explosion of
Yeah.
misinformation.
I don't see. I just think that we're not.
I hope
at
you're
some
right, Steve.
inflection
I hope
point.
you're right,
I just
man.
think, first of all, I think you're underestimating how bad things were in the past. I remember having this conversation in the 1980s.
What was it?
Because of daytime television. You don't remember the whole Phil Donahue? Remember Phil Donahue?
Yeah.
When he was one of the first guys who was doing a daytime talk show who started to like really go off the rails.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
like started to do episodes that were purely for the shock value or the entertainment value. And people were saying, what's happening to the world? We're descending into this abyss where, we're blurring the lines between truth and entertainment.
And we did.
whatever.
We
I'm
were
just
descending
saying,
into the abyss.
But it's been one, and they said the same thing 200
But
years
Steve,
ago.
it is.
It's one.
It's worse now than
continuous
it's ever been. It
process.
really, actually, is
But
worse now than it's
is
ever
it
been.
worse in terms of its net effect? I think.
Yes, it is, and I'll tell you
No,
why.
You're wrong.
It is.
You're objectively wrong.
I'll tell you.
Why?
Look at what the. Calm down.
Polarization.
Breathe. Hold on, I'm
We were
channeling Ted
more
right now. I'm
polarized-
channeling
we were
Ted.
More polarized at,
Right,
at
Steve.
times in the
Steve,
past.
we have a huge swath of the American population who's living under a completely false reality.
All right, I admit that, but I read a very interesting article.
I had to grip the table up here to stabilize myself. I'm
Here.
so frustrated with this idea. Right? Look.
I'm just trying to put it into perspective.
All right, go ahead.
Because, all right, so I
Look at the emoji they put in the Discord.
it is. We are biased. Our generation is maximally
All right, I'm
biased.
so-
Hang on, shut up.
So tired of
Because-
hearing that.
Why? You haven't heard this specific point before, probably.
Okay.
We grew up in a golden age of journalism. That was the exception, not the rule.
Okay, but it doesn't
for
mean-
all. Shut up. For all of human history,
It,
it was the absolute exception. And what you see as this descent into the abyss is really just a regression to the mean.
Steve,
seriously,
I hope you're right.
Things were worse. The polarization, the yellow journalism, the misinformation, the blatant lying, the gaslighting of the public was all worse in the 19th century.
it probably was. It
right?
probably
And
was.
then we went through this golden age of journalism where there were standards and fairness and
But-
balance, and now we're regressing to the mean, and you think we're going to hell in a handbasket. And I'm not saying
But
that
we-
this
but
are
we're
a bad
on it.
trend.
We
I'm just
are-
trying to put it into
I
perspective.
got you. I got it. The
All right.
history lesson has been received.
Thank
and
you.
you're right. You're right. But to flesh out the reality, what we're dealing with right now is we're in the downward trend right
Yeah.
now, right? You and I thought that the internet was going to open people's minds to good information and everything, but it didn't happen.
Well, we thought it was
So-
going to democratize information, and it did.
Yeah.
But democracy is a double-edged sword.
But as we are in this unknown descent, we don't know how fast it's going and what trajectory, but it's going the fuck down. We also are going to add on top of that the explosion of AI and
yeah,
the ability.
That is, I admit, that's a variable.
All right. So there is a cross happening here, and it's scaring the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Because even still, like,
But it could be a good thing,
it
too.
might, but
'Cause we
fucking Steve, so many things could potentially be a good thing, but it smells bad, it looks bad, it tastes bad, it feels bad, it's probably bad. Okay?
All right.
And I'm not done.
Yeah.
My turn. And I don't know what chance, but it's probably not a huge chance, but there is a chance that the fucking government is going to be taken over by a person that wants to be a dictator.
Yeah.
And if you add all that together and all the bad chips fall in the bad way,
Yeah.
we are actually fucked.
Yeah.
Yes,
I agree with that.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you,
I agree with that.
Keith. I'm
But-
going to come to your house. You're going to put me up in your Colorado safe haven. Get me the fuck out of society.
I do think that we'll be fucked for a generation, but we'll get through it and we'll survive.
But you know how dark ages work. When the dark
Yeah.
age hits,
you think we'll be living in Gilead in 20 years?
it's possible, dude, because part of the people who are funding fucking Trump, to do what he's doing are the evangelicals. We don't want. They want.
Which are a declining segment of our population.
I know, but Steve, there is like this.
You
okay,
can't just look at the bad trends and ignore the good.
I'm not
trends.
ignoring. There's lots of good trends.
Yeah.
There's lots of good. I get
And
to
also,
shop.
you know,
I can buy anything I
history-
want on Amazon. It's
History
wonderful.
does this, Jay. History does this, and when we're in the downward trend, you can't say, "Oh my God, it's going to keep on going all the way down." No,
I
but
hope
when
not.
History is
But Steve, sometimes drunk drivers crash and kill people.
So-
It happens.
I agree. Listen, I've been reading a lot about this in the last 10 years. Democracies sometimes die.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we don't want ours to
and
die.
I agree. It's possible. And I also, the thing that really does scare me is the fact that between social media and artificial intelligence and digital surveillance and all that stuff, when a dictatorship an authoritarian government does come to power, the tools that they have to keep power and to have an iron grip on their society is really tremendous.
Yeah, like Genghis Khan. I give the guy mad props.
Yeah.
He accomplished an amazing thing.
And he had
with,
sex with a lot of
with
women.
swords
related to
and
1%.
bow and arrow, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if you gave that guy nukes. Exactly. You are
Right.
totally right.
Yeah.
So
We don't have to imagine. We know Xi Jinping in China.
Yeah.
He's using all the social media stuff, right?
Yep.
Like TikTok. Using all the stuff in order to solidify.
What happened, Ian?
It's this TikTok yells at me when I don't click on TikTok too long.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
All right.
Boop, boop, boop,
It,
Okay.
he's using all of the tools that we're talking about in order to maintain his authoritarian grip on his country.
All right, so we're
including
seeing-
the flow of information and all that. Absolutely.
And it's happening. That's
And-
happening in many countries.
Yeah.
I mean, you take Russia and China. These are, first off, Russia is gigantic, and China's got this incredibly
Yep.
dense population. We're talking about tons of people here, right? And India to a
Yeah.
certain degree.
So, but what I'm really saying is not that bad stuff can't happen, but I'm saying it's not inevitable.
It's not inevitable.
It's not an
It might- it
inevitable
might not
march of
happen.
technology.
But our job, okay,
Yeah.
I agree with you. You're right. It might not happen. Our job, and every single person that's listening to this that calls themselves a critical thinker, it's our duty to push back hard against all this.
Yeah, I agree.
We have to educate people in our lives. We have to educate people online. We have to talk to our local schools and colleges and get them to, we have to try to move the needle in a positive direction. We could all just sit back. I could just sit here and be like, well, we'll see what happens in November. I could do that. But I forced myself to digest the news every day to keep myself up to date. So I'm armed with intelligence. So when somebody does talk to me, they can't get one over on me with misinformation. I can say, no, you're full of shit. And let me tell you all the reasons why. I have to be able to
You
do
have
that.
to. We have to be well educated. So that's. I agree with the fact that to be a responsible, informed citizen of a modern democracy, you have to be way more informed than in the past.
And apparently you are uninformed, Steve.
No, he's talking about something else.
Oh, okay, good.
We also have a lot of creators giving surface level info from a headline or a post.
Oh,
they read.
okay.
Yeah,
That's
so
what I got.
that's
Sorry,
that's
take
a
it back.
different layer, and that's just like most things are mediocre.
I actually
most
agreed with the guy. I
people-
think Steve's full of shit. But okay, go on if you want. Okay.
No, yeah, that's always been a problem with journalism and everything is that most people just are lazy, sloppy, and mediocre, right? That's just the baseline.
They all do. Okay, Ocean Mist, but they all do. It just doesn't matter who has more. There's a huge motivation for people on TikTok to because people make money and livelihood off of TikTok. CNN and Fox. I mean, do you want to talk about making money? But even between those two, because we have to tease out the hairs here. Like, you want to talk about who is more of a force of evil, CNN or Fox? Who are you going to pick? Because I mean, when I fact check, and trust me, you don't.
Well,
you
it's the difference between spin and
but
gaslighting.
I want to
do
talk to
think
this
there's a
particular
very
person though,
qualitative difference.
because I do the thing that most people claim that they do, but they don't. Steve does it too. We actually follow the information back to its source, and I'll watch the video, and I won't listen to what someone says about it. I'll watch it. I'll watch Biden talk. I'll watch Trump talk. And I'll tell you that CNN has way more reality in their news than Fox does by an order of magnitude.
Yeah, it's not even close.
And it just is what it is. Like, so this is where belonging to a political party is going to fucking totally cloud your thinking. Look, CNN has a motivation. Absolutely. I see it as clear as day, but I read tons of different news sources, and CNN by far is not the only place that I watch Fox News too. I want to hear what they're saying. And the things that I notice on Fox News versus CNN is Fox News is unbelievably good with their edit pen. They won't say things. They'll say a lot of stuff, and they'll spew misinformation, but what speaks volumes to me is what they don't say. Which means that they're not giving their listeners the full spectrum of what's going on. They are literally curating this information down to a fucking nub. It tells one story. It's a one-trick pony over there. And that's what we got to worry about. Yeah, CNN is not ideal either because they're heavily skewed as well. But again, like I said, when you dig in, if you do fact check and go back and do your damnedest to figure out what the truth is, CNN is doing better reporting than Fox is. But again, I don't trust either of them. And when I watch, listen, read, or whatever I'm doing with any of these news stations, I question all of it. And I tell you, the thing that really opened my eyes is when I aggregate like 10 different sources of news. You know, I read the BBC, right? I do Reuters. I'm doing a spectrum here. I listen to Fox News. Oh my God, do you ever go into Newsmax? Holy shit, Steve. I mean, I can't even pretend that I'm watching Newsmax. Newsmax is 100% bullshit.
Yeah.
That's it. So, here's
think-
one more thing. One more thing. One more thing. Ocean Mist. I legitimately want to know what the truth is, and my opinion can be changed with evidence in a nanosecond. Evidence is 100% driving my beliefs. That's it. Because for example, when Donald Trump had 60 some odd court cases claiming that the election was a lie, and in every single one of those court cases, but he never brought information that showed that
he lost 60 out of 61 cases. They were mostly dismissed for being frivolous because they didn't bring any evidence, and one was on a technicality, had nothing to do with the court question. So basically, he had an opportunity to present in the court of law evidence for voter fraud, right, in 2020, and he failed. He hired a company to say, find me evidence of voter fraud. They said there isn't any.
Yeah.
His own AG said there isn't any evidence of voter fraud.
The guy that he hired to put in charge of stabilizing the election process and making it secure said this was the most secure election we've ever had. So when we talk about, like, that's a great example because, like, there has been no evidence, and he's still saying it, and he's saying it, and he's saying it.
60% of his followers believe him, or something like that. Yeah. So, but all right. But here's the thing: we have to avoid the temptation of the lazy false equivalency, right?
Yep.
And that it's very dangerous. The false equivalency is.
I should have taken his Xanax. Well, I'm super. Look, when it comes to like the politics that are going on, I don't know what country you live in, but I'm steeped in this. Like I am scared. I am really actually scared. At one point, not too long ago, I talked to Steve like, well, what are we gonna do? Like if someone like Trump gets into the office, we are en route to potentially be Gilead for real, guys. Like, come on, we got to stop pretending that everything is going to be all right. It's not. It's not just going to be an okay thing we got through the last 4 years. Look up Project 25. That is 100% happening. Research that, please. Read about it. That's happening. Our government will be denutted of all its institutional knowledge. I brought this up before.
Yeah.
I'll give you one office in the U.S. government. We'll just take one. Now you can spread what I'm about to say to every single major office department in the U.S. government. Let's just take the anti-hacking and software security, part of the government. The people that are in charge of securing government servers, protecting things like our grid and all that stuff, and also, doing counter-hacking moves to get people, out of being able to hack and knocking hackers out and maybe even damaging hackers that are out there trying to damage us. Now you take the person that's in charge of that department and you fire them and you put in a loyalist who doesn't know what the hell they're doing and put them in charge of that department. What do you think is going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
That one department If they go wrong, that can take down the entire country. Our electrical grid can go bye-bye overnight, wake up, there's no fucking power, and we are done. This is what I'm talking about. Now, we have thousands of departments who are going to be replaced by people who don't know what they're doing. This is Project 25, guys. And
2025.
It's 2025. It's the same thing. It's happening. It's going to happen if Trump gets into office. Now, look, I believe in an open and fair election. If Trump gets in legitimately and he gets voted in and he wins, so be it. He won. I get it. But for those of you who care, and those of you who are worried about what the future might bring, if Project 25 fucking happens, the United States is not going to be a country to live in anymore. And that is fucked up. And you know I'm right. If you fully understand what Project 25 is, regardless of what political affiliation they are, you cannot replace and get rid of our institutional knowledge. You can't do it, guys. You can't. So it is. No, I mean, I could talk for an hour about it, but my final comment here on that is read about that one thing. If you don't read about anything else today, read about Project 2025. Learn about what's going on. It's happening. It is going to happen if Trump gets in. And you make up your own mind whether or not you think that should happen.
Yeah. Although,
Oh, and I got one.
for the record, that Project 2025 is not something that's coming out of Donald Trump himself. This is people who are their plan is to take advantage of a Trump presidency to enact it. And it is about, basically, they're trying to say that the deep state is all infested with radical liberals. We have to get rid of them and replace them with people who will enact the president's agenda, which is not fundamentally different than what happens in every administration to some degree. In this case, it's really just a matter of degree. And that's often the case. Like people, this is what gets back to that false equivalency thing, which I didn't really finish making that point.
Sorry about that.
Is the idea that, like, yes, all politicians lie. I think that to a first approximation, that is a reasonable statement, right? Politicians at their baseline are in the job of persuading people to their agenda, to vote for them, to their side, etc. And so everything goes through this political filter, which introduces a certain amount of spin, of deception, etc. But there is sort of a normal baseline level of political spin, which I'm not defending. I hate it myself.
I hate it. Yeah,
and
it's
I
terrible.
appreciate it when you see an occasional rare politician actually tell the truth, like the unvarnished, really sincere truth.
And I have a perfect example of that I can tell you.
But that's the baseline. But then you have some politicians who are taking it like orders of magnitude greater, to the point where they're not just spinning reality, they are creating an alternate reality built entirely on just shameless lies. And saying that those two things are the same is very dangerous.
It's bullshit.
Is not to appreciate the difference between political spin and gaslighting with an alternate reality. It's the same thing with news programs. You have, traditionally, meaning going back, 30, 40 years, whatever, you had, various mainstream news outlets, and they had their editorial spin, right? And there were some that were more to the left, some were more in the midline, some were more to the right. But then you have, with the, getting rid of the fairness doctrine and other things, that what happened was you had the creation of news outlets like Fox News, which are completely beyond that normal editorial spectrum
It's
of
not like
mainstream media.
they're just not showing certain things, or they might put a moderate spin on something.
They have an alternate reality. They're not telling, and even like they admit it, in so many words themselves. Like, this is not news. This is not the news. This is Fox News, right? They're telling, this is the narrative that their viewers want to see, right? And so they don't tell certain stories, because they don't fit the narrative. And I mean, if you've never actually sat down and watched Fox News like for hours, like really consumed it, it's hard to imagine what I'm talking about. But especially the opinion, side of Fox, it is amazing the degree to which it is pure propaganda, like just really shameless, blatant propaganda.
And I'll say something that is, like, I've come to realize. I grew up a Republican. I grew up Catholic. This all came from my parents. I didn't get to pick any of this. It was assigned to me, right?
Yeah.
I happily didn't have to pay much attention to politics for the bulk of my young adult life, right? And I wasn't that interested in it. I became drastically interested in it. Probably when I hit my 40s, I started to really pay attention, and then I got like steeped in it. When Trump started running for president, and I started to worry, and I really thought, I gotta kind of get my chops up on this and really start to pay attention. And I'm embarrassed that it took me so long to do that. But the bottom line is, I'm not affiliated with a political party right now, and I made this decision willfully because I don't want to. I don't want to just be like, hey, I'm going to vote for this team. I don't vote for any team. I hold every freaking politician has to be held to a very high bar. So this false equivalency thing that Steve is talking about, when I did a deep dive on what Biden has done during his presidency, I went from 3 years ago to someone like, well, I know enough about Joe Biden. I saw him as a VP for 8 years. I read some of his political background. I saw him mostly as a straight shooter. I'll tell you what, you want to know what the reality is? Joe Biden is an excellent president. Again, I identify more as a Republican than as a Democrat just from my lifelong truth that I was a Republican, right? Like it took me a while to kind of stop hating Democrats because of the word and started to realize that it's all bullshit. It's just bullshit. Belonging to a political party just makes you root for your team. If you don't belong to a political party, when I went into analyzing Joe Biden, who, if I was still a Republican, if it was me 20 years ago, I wouldn't have liked him just because I was a Republican. But when you look at what he did, for real, see what the guy actually accomplished. When you read that, this false equivalency thing is the most absurd thing that's going on. It's ridiculous. I'm not saying that all the Democrats in the Democratic Party have their head on straight, but Joe Biden is a fucking excellent president that pulled us out of the pandemic shitstorm that Trump created. The guy actually turned the economy around. For real. For real. He actually had an effect on the economy that's measurable, which most presidents can't claim.
So listen, you could definitely have different political views. That's fine. And you can prioritize different things. You could disagree on policy. There's things to criticize about the Biden administration as well. I agree with you that on the balance, he's done a great job. Just to look at all the presidents in our lifetime, he's actually been able to accomplish quite a bit in his first term. But that doesn't really even matter. I think the important point is it is really useful to not identify strongly with one team or another.
Don't do it.
I remember, after Trump came into office, and because there are a dozen or so political pundits that I follow regularly, right? I just read every week, but across the political spectrum. Actually, if anything, a little bit more mostly in the center, definitely some center right. And what's interesting is reading a couple of them, like Max Boot, I think is a good example. I don't know if you ever read him. Very good writer especially on foreign policy, and he, is a Republican, a conservative. And after, he's a never Trumper. And he actually wrote an article about the fact that, as a journalist, I can't tell you how freeing it was to no longer identify as a Republican.
Yep.
Like suddenly, I didn't have to constrain my opinion to one side. I could just call it like I see it. And it was like the scales fell from my eyes.
Isn't it funny
he
though?
thinks so much more clearly.
Yes,
and argues
exactly.
so much more clearly because he's not trying to shill for one side. He's just calling it as he sees it. That's the most important thing. It's not whether or not you like Biden or not or whatever, or what policy, where you fall on the political spectrum. For the record, as the SGU is politically neutral in that, we don't take political sides. We are talking about critical thinking and science and but I also think that the current political climate in the United States is also not about the political spectrum. It's about democracy or no democracy.
But as a skeptic,
it's different.
Steve, look.
Listen, the facts fall where they may.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
The
right?
facts fall where they. Sometimes they support one side, sometimes they support the other.
The same ways that they've judged every modern president in the United States, right? The same measures, the economy, GDP, all of these things that you look at. If you look at them, and this is where, when Trump was in office, they believed all those stats, and when Trump is that, or actually they believed in the fake versions of those stats. Now Trump's out of office, and the people that I went to high school with, who are all hardcore Republicans, most of them, they'll be like, oh, that's all fake news. It's like, well, you don't fucking believe anything.
Yeah.
The only thing that they believe.
Well, they're selective in what they believe.
Yeah. So like, okay, so we
If the
can't.
numbers support their side, they believe them. If they don't, they just dismiss them.
Yeah, it's like winning or losing an election. If you win, then you believe the votes. If you
Yeah.
lose, you don't. Like, but when
Yeah.
you're able, when Steve said is so freaking important, it's that marker. You saying that you belong to a political party. I don't care what country you're in at all. Like, I just don't belong to a political party.
Well, it's okay. I mean, like, if you need to register or whatever, that's fine. But I'm just thinking, just as your
Intellectually,
identity,
yeah.
intellectually. But the problem is people go from, like, to identity to a party to, like, I mean, ideology to a party to a worldview to an identity.
Yeah.
And when you get to the identity level, then you're effed, right? Then you're screwed, because then facts become an attack on you, right? On your tribe.
That's right.
And you never want to be in a position where you have to be defensive about a fact, right? Like that a fact is incompatible with your own vision of yourself.
it's just
you have to be adaptable to whatever the facts are.
It's a much healthier and respectable position to be not.
Yeah.
Look, you want to follow a football team, go for it.
Yeah.
Like, sure, it's fun. Your team wins, and when your team loses, you feel bad. But it might be worth the positive feeling that you get when your team wins, or you get to have like a season where it's great. That's fine. When we're talking about people who are running the country,
running the free world.
yeah. I mean, there was this one video where Joe Biden like went up to this kid who has a stutter. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It was really awesome. Like this guy. One of the busiest goddamn jobs you could
I think
probably
he's a
ever.
genuinely good guy.
Yeah, he talks to this kid. He's telling him, I have a stutter. Don't let them tell you what you can and can't do. You can do it. You're smart. He is trying to help this kid who's going to be affected his entire life by a condition that is no fault of his own. And then you juxtapose that to Donald Trump making fun recently of the State of the Union address, making fun of Joe Biden's stutter. 30 years ago, that would have gotten that guy, 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, that would have disqualified him for running for president. People have been like, what the hell is that? And like rejected him. This guy can do and say anything he wants to the people who follow him, and they'll go along with it. So this is a cult, guys. That political party is now a cult. And if you're a critical thinker, you know what a cult is and you know how they operate. And if you look at what cults do and look at what's going on there, that is what's happening. That's what's going on now. Again, I don't identify as a Democrat. I identify as someone that wants my government to fucking work for me. Work for us, I should say. Sorry. But when I'm going to bed at night, I'm thinking about me, right? Can't help it. I have kids. I gotta get up and make money for my kids. So I'm very concerned about what's going to be happening with the job market and everything. It's a big freaking thing to worry about when you have kids. It'll keep you up at night. So when I think about, who's done more, I could look at Trump's 4 years and I can look at Biden's 3.5 years, and I can very clearly and easily deduce which one is more skilled to be president. Now, is Biden the best president we could ever have? No, but we've never had the best president we could ever have. Everyone comes with their own baggage or whatever. But I'll tell you what, that guy, in my opinion, actually gives a shit about the country and wants to help. Wants people that live in the U.S. to have better lives. You can't say that about Donald Trump. And if you will, then you got to prove it. And I'll disprove it, anything you say, because Trump only does what's in his best interest. And it's so freaking obvious. It's so obvious. So think about this. I've been a critical thinker for over 20 years. I've trained myself to be humble, and I've trained myself to believe in the information that is backed by science and evidence and information. And I look at what Donald Trump is doing, and it is the absolute most absurd thing I've ever seen in my adult life. What is going on with this guy and what's happening with him? Like we listed some.
This is outside the range of normal. It's just not normal, and I do think we have to avoid the temptation to normalize the kind of things that Trump says and does. And that's why, even though we are apolitical, but Trump is a con artist.
Yep.
We had him pegged as a con artist before he even
30
ran
years
for
ago.
president.
I remember
we're from the Northeast. We know Donald Trump. We know we've been
his
living in his
lore
backyard.
is everywhere. When he was
our whole lives, the guy's a con artist.
when he was in Home Alone 2, which I think was late 80s, maybe early 90s, I
early
remember saying to myself, so you think, Jay, okay, let's talk about this, Conley, but let me finish my point. 30 fucking years ago watching Home Alone 2 when Donald Trump had his little cameo, I remember saying to myself, oh, they put that asshole in this movie? I've hated that guy and his shit reputation, and people in New York City know exactly what the fuck this guy's about. I mean, you can't live in this part of the country and not know the lore behind Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The guy is a fucking scam artist. All right, Con Lee, talk to me. What did I say that you don't agree with? And I promise I won't yell loud.
Well, and while he's writing that, let me just say, I've been critical of Trump again before he ever ran for president because he is an anti-vaxxer, right? He's
Anti-intellectual.
He's a conspiracy theorist. He's a con artist.
Yep.
He's an anti-intellectual. All of these things, and of course, it wasn't controversial to criticize these things before he became the Orange Jesus, right? Before the religious right decided that God sent him here to save the country from the pedophile, demon-worshipping Democrats, right? I mean, that's the level that we're talking about now.
Do I actually believe the world has improved in any way since Biden took office? Well, I don't want to comment on the world because the
world's kind of a big deal.
That's a very difficult thing.
So-
Joe Biden is the president of the United States, okay? My opinion of him when he got into office, like I said, was he was the VP, didn't do much, didn't hear much from him. The guy has a very long record in which you could see in the
All
government.
right, let me take over for a minute.
All right.
You need to calm down.
All right, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to
You
do
need to
breathing
breathe. Let me
exercises.
take over for a minute.
I
I
that
think
monk video. Where's the monk video?
the premise of your question is flawed.
Let me find it.
And I think that's how most people approach this question of, do I like this president or not? Like, is the world better or worse? Is my world better or worse? But that is not the way to look at it. You know how many variables are involved in is the world better? And and how many of those variables are influenced, let alone controlled by the president of the United States? It's not a good metric. It's a very biased metric. So also, most of what the president does they'll have a delayed effect by years, maybe even decades. What you need to look at is the policies of the president and whether or not you think that those are good policies, and in the time that there has been, have they worked? We could say a number of objective things. That Biden stayed out of the Fed's way, let them manage the economy the way they thought, and they pulled off a hat trick of essentially a soft landing for inflation without causing a recession, with most economists said could not happen. They freaking did it. You got to give him props for that. Biden's his policy approach to global warming was, basically industrial policy, the Inflation Reduction Act. We're going to give the industry a lot of carrots, a lot of incentive to reduce their risk, increase their incentive to invest in energy, especially green energy, including nuclear, including electric vehicles, wind and solar, all that stuff. And it's worked fabulously. He got the infrastructure bill passed, which also has a lot of really good stuff in it, really very good projects. He got the Chips and Science law passed, which is onshoring a lot of critical manufacturing like advanced computer chips, et cetera. Those are policy decisions. Those policy decisions make sense. They're working well. Now, you may honestly disagree with the government taking on that kind of industrial policy, and I get that, and you're free to do so. That's the level where policy debates should be happening. But you can't say that those have not had a positive effect. They have. He got them done, and they had an effect, right? So there's a lot of policy decisions that you have to look at, and you can't just say, is the world a better place now than it was? But here's the other thing. Even when you use that metric, like were you better off than you were 4 years ago, you have to at least be internally consistent. One thing that drives me crazy, the people who say that, when they give Trump a 100% pass on completely tanking the economy and completely blowing the response to the pandemic. Were you really better off at the end of 2020 than you were at the end of 2016? Nobody was. The world was a disaster at the end of Trump's administration. Does he get full blame for that? No. There was a pandemic. But you can't But neither does Biden get credit or blame for everything that's happened in the world on his watch. You have to drill down to what's their philosophy, what's their skill, what is their policy, proposals, what are they going to do? That's what you have to look at. You can't just say, is the world a better place or is it not a better place? And again, that's even a complicated question. It's a very complicated question. You have to, by what metric, by one perspective? Yes, we're better off now than we were 4 years ago because we are in the middle of a pandemic, right? The economy has massively recovered. The supply chain bottlenecks have massively recovered since then. So lots of good things have happened, absolutely. But let me also bring this to a critical thinking level. For those of you who don't know what confirmation bias is, let me explain to you what that is. Confirmation bias is one of the most pervasive biases in the way we think about the world, right? The way we think about things. We tend to accept facts which support our pre-existing narrative, right? And by narrative, I mean things that we already think are true or things that we want to be true. We may not, whether or not we think they're true, we want them to be true, right? So we basically notice and accept facts that support our narrative, our pre-existing narrative, which includes ideology, identity, tribe, all those things. For facts that are disconfirming or conflict with that, first of all, we may not notice them. We don't look for them. We don't remember them. They don't get incorporated into our worldview. And when we are forced to confront them, we explain them away, right? We dismiss them. It's fake news or whatever. There's another explanation for that. And we're really good at that. We're really good at that. And in fact, we often do that subconsciously. We're not even aware that we're always doing it. It's happening at a subconscious level. It's happening at a conscious level, constantly in the background. Our brains are basically curating reality for us to make us feel good. And by feeling good, that means eliminating things like cognitive dissonance, which is what you feel when facts disagree with each other or disagree with your worldview, and by reinforcing our self-image, reinforcing our tribe, reinforcing our worldview and our ideology, right? That's always happening. And so when you ask open-ended questions like, is the world a better place or blah, 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 when there's so much noise, there's so much information out there that if you want to, you can use the data that's out there in order to argue that Trump is the worst human being who has ever lived or he's the savior of humanity. You could use the same sort of noisy information out there to argue that Biden is the best president we've ever had or the worst president we've ever had. And really believe what you're saying because it's fact-based, right? You're saying, I have facts. Here they are, right? Because you're unaware of the massive degree that confirmation bias is having on your perception of reality. So how do you keep that from happening? That gets back to why you really have to consciously try not to have a tribe. When it comes to reality, right? Don't have I have to look at reality from this perspective because this is my identity, this is my tribe, this is my ideology, my ism, whatever. I try to not have any label attached to what I think about reality. I try to be as neutral as possible, as objective as possible. You also have to actively consider the role that confirmation bias may be playing in biasing your perception. And you also have to actively work against confirmation bias by, for example, reading things you disagree with, searching out information from the other side. Whenever I confront any question, I never take the first thing that I read or only look for things that confirm what I already believe. I always say, okay, what's the other side say? Why do they disagree with this? Who disagrees with this? Why? And who has the better argument at the end of the day? Can we get back to some of what do I know objectively for sure? What are the facts that we can get back to or dig down to as our baseline? Where is their common ground, et cetera? You have to go through a really elaborate process. This is what we were talking about before about how do we know reality from unreality. There's a critical thinking process you go through to try to figure out what narrative is more likely to be true. And sometimes you just don't know and you have to be okay with that as well. You have to know when you're substituting your own opinion for reality, which you will do by default unless you consciously work against it, right? So this idea of like, what is the world better now than it was 4 years ago is so rife with bias. It's worthless. It's utterly worthless. You need to almost go issue by issue. And again, you shouldn't do it in the guise of trying to make a case for, is this one person a good president or a bad president or whatever? Because everyone's a mixed bag, and you have to be willing to say, he kind of screwed up on this. This was okay. This was a home run. That was really good. I agree with him here. I disagree with him there. I'm not sure what I think about this one. This one is complicated. The facts kind of cut both ways, because that's reality. It's freaking messy, right? And we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 4 years. We're just making our best guess based upon what the people are saying that they believe in and they're going to do, what kind of person they are, etc. I do think we have a very stark, choice coming up in November for us, and you could decide how to make that for yourself. Everyone should get out there, educate themselves, and vote. The more people who vote, the better. That is usually the case. We don't, again, we're not, it's not our job to place our bets along the political spectrum. But again, I think this election is not just about politics. It's not just about right, left, or ideology. There are some stark differences in terms of just democracy. And, we absolutely, as, members of a democratic country, society, have a duty to educate ourselves about that. There are people, our fellow citizens, who are saying things like, maybe it's time for a dictator. Maybe that's not such a bad idea. Maybe to fix things, maybe we do need a dictator. Some of our fellow citizens are saying that. And, we need to understand exactly what's going on. And yes, as Keith said, this is true up and down the ballot. And also, Jon Stewart made a good point a couple of weeks ago, saying democracy, it is not about one election, right? It's about, it's every election. It takes constant maintenance. It is not the kind of thing that we're going to win or lose at one point in time. It is a process. It is a dynamic, active process every day, every election. You have to stay, you have to be a well-informed citizen, and you have to make thoughtful decisions in terms of your vote. And just, voting, I think, out of, anger or retribution, or this is my team, this is my tribe, that's not healthy for democracy. Misinformation is not healthy for democracy. Our forefathers understood that democracy only works when you have an educated, informed citizenry. It cannot work. Cannot work if the average citizen doesn't have the information in front of them. It's like in medicine, we have this concept of informed consent, right? So, we deal with patients all the time who have to make life-altering decisions. Do you want to undergo back surgery? And you think medical decisions are never cut and dried, straightforward. Usually not, right? There's usually some kind of back and forth, with medical decisions. And so back surgery is a common one. It's like, okay, well, you're having horrible back pain and leg pain. We're seeing some stuff on your MRI scan. We're not 100% sure if what we're seeing is causing your symptoms. We're not 100% sure that surgically fixing the anatomical problems that we're seeing are going to fix your symptoms. We can also cause new problems because of the surgery, and you're going to need rehab, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of details to the decision-making process, and we can't make decisions for patients. They have to make decisions for themselves. And so, but they can't do that unless they have enough information. We have to give them enough information to make an informed decision for themselves, right? And when you imagine now giving a patient misinformation about their surgery, lying to them about the statistics or about the real risks, or telling them that it's going to have more benefit than it really will likely have. Is that informed consent, right? Are they making an informed decision then? You know, if you do that, that's malpractice, right? You could literally get sued for malpractice if you lie to patients about the known statistics, you know, about their treatment that you're selling them. But of course, there is no political malpractice. I mean, I think there is ethically, but there isn't legally. But now you have politicians lying to the public about facts and saying, vote for me because lie, right? Imagine a physician doing that, you know, let me operate on you because here's a bunch of lies to convince you to let me operate on you, right? That person could not only get sued out of, you know, medical practice, they could go to jail if it's egregious enough. But we don't really have, the only thing we have in politics is the vote, right? You could vote them out of office or not vote them into office if you think that's the case. And how do we know? Because we need like a free press, and we need the checks and balances. You need to listen to all sides. You need to try to get objective sources of information. You need to dig back to primary sources, right? That's how you figure it out, politically speaking. And sometimes, like, just being lazy is enough for democracies to die, because, you know, democracies cannot thrive if we're all too lazy to bother to inform ourselves about what's actually going on.
And when you listen to, I know that they're showing the worst of the worst, but there's people who interview MAGA people at rallies and stuff, and they just ask them questions, like about the Constitution, about, would you back a president who did X, Y, and Z? And it's like things that Trump has done without identifying that it's Trump, and they don't even know what Trump has done. Now, a part of me is frustrated.
Well, that study's been done too. Like, you could tell, because this is a standard type of psychological study, right? So if you take a couple hundred people, you give them all a questionnaire that doesn't ask them, like, or it may, but it basically tries to evaluate where are they on the political spectrum from liberal to conservative, and do they identify, as Republican, Independent, or Democrat, and then you can ask them a bunch of those questions, like, do you agree with this policy, or do you agree with this behavior, and without attaching it to a political party. Or you could say, this Republican president proposed that we do this. Do you agree with that or not? And then you tell another subset of the people, a Democratic president proposed we do the same thing. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
And people agree or disagree with a policy depending on whether or not they think it came from a Republican or a Democrat. That again is the confirmation bias. That's what I'm saying. But if you're independent and you're free of that bias, you could look at it on its own merits rather than thinking, how do I make this fit my team?
The guy he's asking questions, right? The interviewer is asking questions. And it's funny, is my gut is always like, especially if it's something I know a lot of what's going on, right? But every once in a while they'll ask them a question, and I go, oh, I need to research that before I can answer it.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to answer the question. I mean, I want to inform myself, especially about details that are in the Constitution. I don't have all that in my head. It's too much. But the point is, there's two ways to look at MAGA people. One could be with a sword, and one could be with a feather. Part of me is like violently angry at these people for falling for this con, and for making all this possible. And another part of me, I feel so bad for them because they don't know any better. They don't know that they're duped. They don't know that they've been inserted into cult-like thinking. They don't know any of that. And they're victims. They have been victimized.
Or they're voting against their best interest.
Yeah. They because ultimately...
So I agree with that, but I do think that doesn't absolve them of responsibility.
It doesn't, but we have to look at it both ways,
Yeah,
though.
I agree. And in 2016, I think that was my dominant approach. It's like, okay, like, this is Fox News, et cetera, whatever. They're living in an alternate information ecosystem, and, blah, blah, blah. And they don't really know what they were getting into. And we tend not to blame the victims of a con artist, right? That's the usual mantra. But now we're at 2024. If you're voting for Trump now, you know exactly what you're voting for. This is no longer, you're an adult, you're a citizen, and this is no longer like they don't know what they're doing or whatever. You're voting for somebody who has been credibly deemed by a court of law to have raped somebody and then slandered them about it. I know it was a civil trial, raped them, not a criminal trial, but still a court said, yeah, it's more likely than not that you actually graped that person and then slandered them about it, and then he slandered them again, and then he slandered the judge and the court system and whatever, blah blah blah. So you know all of that.
Yeah,
You
they're
know-
leaning into
You
it.
know he said that migrants are not people, right? You know he said that as well.
They're
You know he said he
poisoning the
wants
blood
to be
of
a
our
dictator.
country.
Yeah, they're poisoning the blood of our country. You know that he said he wants to be a dictator for a day. You know all of those things, and you are choosing to support him anyway. I think the mitigating factors are getting less and less and less compelling, and the level of responsibility is getting greater and greater and greater. And it's just hard to have sympathy for somebody who votes for Trump these days, knowing everything that we know.
Yeah.
And then for like fellow politicians, like when Mitch McConnell endorsed him, like, yeah, that's a sniveling, spineless, cowardly thing to do. He knows the threat that Trump faces to the country, and he's making a cynical, calculating political decision to endorse him. And also, there are a lot. Here's the other thing: like you say, well, how do we know what's true or not? There are dozens of competent, career politicians and experts and whatever who worked in the first Trump administration, who are now in one form or another are saying, yeah, I worked side by side with this guy for however many long during his first presidency. He is a dangerous, delusional child.
Yep.
And some version of that. They know exactly how incompetent and how dangerous he deserves to be nowhere near, the levers of power. And yet they're not like shouting from the rooftops.
Yeah.
Again, it's like
I know.
So you wrote your book and you made your case, but like, where are you? Like, only like Liz Cheney's out there saying, dudes, like, this guy's dangerous. We shouldn't. I'm a Republican, but this is not about being a Republican anymore. This is about democracy. This is about the Constitution. And anyway, so the level of universal cowardice on that end of the spectrum has been the most disappointing thing about the whole thing.
The party's been radicalized.
It's been radicalized,
and unfortunately, the U.S. only has two political parties, so we're in a very bad situation. And it's also Pandora's box. It's been opened. We've taken major steps back in etiquette and norms and all that stuff.
Well, he made shamelessness a viable political persona, and other people are trying to replicate that. It will be interesting to see, like once Trump is actually permanently gone from the scene, how much will we regress to the mean, or how much will anyone other than Trump be able to successfully make shamelessness a political brand the way that he did? I'm obviously hoping the answer to that is no, and that nobody's been able to do it so far. They've tried, but no one has been able to have. No one has the magic shamelessness power that Trump somehow has. And I think that's sort of the real danger. But we'll see what happens in a post-Trump world. It's very I hope we get to that sooner than later. But we'll see.
So this was a great discussion. I mean, I think it's important to have.
Oh wait, I think we need a palate cleanser, right?
Yeah.
Jay sent me something as a palate cleanser. Right? I'm not sure if this is the monk that he's talking about. Is this the monk?
No, it's not the monk. So it's so funny because the baby's expression is kind of coming through, Oh my God.
Yeah, apparently that's the monk that Jay has been interested.
That's not the monk. I looked. I'll have to wait till he comes up on my feet again. So, to summarize, this hour and a half, 2 hour discussion rant. What my summary is, if you are on the fence and not fully, agreeing with us, that's totally fine.
That's fine, but educate yourself.
But I think you will find the truth if you truly do educate yourself and be very critical of your sources. And that is part of this problem that the world we live in now, is that there is multiple realities, and it's very easy to discredit the other side, and it's scary. When I try to talk to people on Facebook that I went to high school with, who all grew up, like I said, they're all hardcore Republicans. When I try to talk to them, I have found them to be 100% impenetrable. Doesn't matter how nice I am. Doesn't matter how much information I give. Doesn't matter what I drop in that nothing matters. And that's a real problem, because if we can't reach out to these people, I mean, look, I'll welcome them back if they want to come back. You know what I mean? They want to rejoin society. I'll let all this be put behind us. I'm not gonna hold a grudge the rest of my life. But I think it's us, people that care about this topic, that care about what's going on. We need to educate people. We need to get those numbers up where people understand what's going on and how critical this is.
I want to answer one question. Somebody asked, should all politicians be psychologically evaluated? I think the answer is yes, they should be. Absolutely. What I think, especially like at the president and therefore vice president level, I think Joe Biden should freaking do this, is say, listen, we'll let the American Academy of Neurology or whatever, some, medical, like the AMA, the ANA, the APA, whatever, American Psychological Society, we'll let them appoint 3 world-class, recognized, objectively good, best quality clinicians whose job it is to evaluate neurological and psychological health, and who are, everyone agrees they'll be objective, they're, politically, whatever, not extreme on one side or the other, they balance each other out, whatever. Have a panel of 3 people, and they will do a full neurological and mental status exam on every candidate for president and vice president, and with the agreement that their report becomes public, whatever it says, right? And if I were on Joe Biden's team, or if he were taking my advice, I would tell him, do that, and on the condition that Trump does it too.
Yeah, and then it has to go public.
And and you can't. Yeah, it's none of this like my personal physician said I'm great. None of that shit. It's do it with people who are so qualified and objective that they're unimpeachable, right? And have it be like 3 people who all agree. Yep, I from everything I've seen that's available in the public domain. Again, I haven't examined any of these people. I have no secret knowledge or anything. But I don't think that Trump would come out on top of that analysis. For all the noise they're making about Biden's age, Biden hasn't done anything to indicate that he has any neurological issues, whereas Trump is like dangerously incoherent and can't even complete a sentence. Between the two, if I had to put my nickel down and say who is having like an actual neurological degeneration, Trump is the one that I would be concerned about, not Biden. But anyway, we could settle this by just having an objective neurological evaluation.
It'll never happen.
I know, but the thing is, if he just made the challenge to
absolutely
to Trump, what could Trump say?
Yeah.
No. It's like you think I'm having memory problems? Let's throw down. The public deserves to know.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but we both have to do it, and we'll let the chips fall where they may.
But doesn't that almost only influence the people who are already probably going to vote for Biden?
I don't know. The thing is, we know that because of the way things are, that these elections are going to be decided by a few people on the fence in swing states. So it doesn't matter for most people. What matters is those 1-2% of people in those 7 swing states who are independent and on the fence. Those are the people we need to persuade, and I do think this would persuade them.
It's almost like the Electoral College is a bad idea.
It's almost as if the Electoral College is a bad idea. Yeah.
MC Hall, I don't agree. I do think that there is an objective evaluation that neurologists have. I mean, they
100 years of medical history. I mean, this is what determines it. It's not random. Again, I'm a neurologist, in case you're not aware of this fact. I'm a neurologist, right? And the neurological exam, which I teach every day to students, fellows, residents, etc., the neurological exam is not random. This is an objective test that has evolved over a century in order to get objective medical information about the health and functioning of someone's nervous system, right? It's validated. Meaning that when a test is validated, that means that it's compared to objective findings. Like, does it square with what we see on MRI scan or EEG or other things? Does it square with real life outcomes? Does it predict your prognosis or the fact whether or not you have a disease, et cetera? These are objective measures. Absolutely. They are validated. They've been used for decades, 100 years. We have a lot of information about their sensitivity, their specificity, their predictive power, their utility. They're as objective as you get.
Yeah, but the guy clarified. He said if the politicians have a say, they won't agree.
But that's my point is that's why you issue it as a challenge.
Yeah.
We'll both submit ourselves to an objective third-party panel of experts, of undeniable experts, and they will make their findings public no matter what. I'll take this leap into the dark if you take it, and because I agree, the public needs to know if I'm neurologically intact right now.
Yeah.
The public needs to know if I'm demented, etc. I don't think I am. I'm willing to put my chips down and let an objective panel of neurologists determine that if you do it too.
Yeah.
And
He won't
that
do it.
kind of puts him in a no-win scenario, because if he refuses to do it,
It's telling.
it's very telling. And if he does it, and and again, of course, I don't know what the outcome's going to be either, because I haven't examined either of these people. I could make a guess based upon what I'm seeing in the public domain. But, whatever happens, happens, And I think that should become standard. Just like I think every presidential candidate needs to release their tax returns. Every president, there's certain things that transparency demands that the public deserves. We deserve, before we decide who to put in charge of our country for 4 years, there is certain information, this is again informed consent, that we deserve to have. And I think this is not in the Constitution, it's not in any law. I think it should have been. I think they should put this in law. They should absolutely codify this, but it should become standard to do so to such a degree that you can't weasel out of it,
Yep.
right?
Yep. I agree. Totally, man. That would be awesome. if
What's
we
the
could-
downside? Don't you want to know what an objective neurological exam by experts has to say about the cognitive and
Yep.
neurological function of people who we might vote on for president?
I
I
mean,
want to know.
So the people who are around Trump, if he very likely does have some cognitive decline, but if he does, they know.
Oh yeah,
They absolutely know.
oh, totally.
And it's more and more I'm getting this impression like Trump is definitely like a
his father had dementia.
yeah, I did know
Yeah.
that. But I am starting to really believe, and tell me what you think about this. I'm starting to really believe that Trump is just a fucking puppet, that like he's got his
No.
people that are pushing his buttons, man.
I mean, I think that's true to some extent. That I think people used him, but I don't think he's a puppet. He is his own man. He is what he is. But
I think he's being
about-
manipulated
think
by
about-
all the people
oh, yeah.
around him.
Yeah, once he came into power, then of course people are going to try to utilize that. But this Reagan's second term, he absolutely had Alzheimer's
Yeah, he
disease
did.
in his second term,
Yep.
and the people around him hid that. They kept it, and they covered for him. And it was speculation in the media, like is Reagan losing it? And of course, once he's out of office, it's like, yeah, he's got Alzheimer's disease. Of course he had it.
Yeah.
Several years earlier, and you could see it. You could see it when you like even in the 84 debates compared to the 80 debates.
Yeah, he wasn't as sharp.
He was not the same person that he was. He
No.
was absolutely not the same person. And you bring up certainly Biden's not the same person he was 10 years ago. Trump is not the same person he was 10 years ago. And the question is it normal aging or is it
Yeah,
pathological?
they're neurological.
That's a
thing.
question that I have to answer all the time. That's my job, is to answer that specific question.
Well, what the fuck
I have
do you know,
patients
Steve?
sitting in front of me who are like 70 years old, 75, 80 years old, and like I'm having trouble thinking of names and words and blah blah blah. And what's going on, right? And I have to figure out, is this normal aging? Is it some other thing that's going on that's not neurological? Like, are they not sleeping? Are they depressed? Are they anxious? Or do they have early Alzheimer's, right? That's a pretty standard nuts and bolts, bread
Yeah.
and butter, neurological question that we get asked all the time. This is like my week-to-week kind of thing that gets asked. And there's a process that we go to figure that out. And it's really good at figuring it out. It's really good. It's very predictive. Like, we're very good at telling who is in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease versus who is just, somebody who's under stress or maybe just normal aging. And so I absolutely think our presidents should go through that. And every 4 years, like if you run again, you go through it again, right? It's not like you don't get grandfathered in for however many years. Why not? Why not? And I think that should be true for the full medical exam, not just the neurological exam. You should submit yourself for a full medical exam, a full neurological evaluation, and the country needs to know what your health status is.
Steve, Keith Davies said, "As a carpenter, my diagnosis of Trump is he's a clinically a narcissist." You don't need to be a fucking neurologist, right, Keith, to know that he's got parts on order. Oh my God. All right, so I have emotionally spent all of my energy.
Did we technically do the YouTube video? I don't know. Should we do one, or should we move on to TikToks? Or what do you want?
I mean, I could easily pluck out a half hour out of this.
I don't think there should be a hard age limit. The same thing with driving or anything else. It should be individual. And same thing like you have an 80-year-old. Should this guy, like the family wants to know, should my 80-year-old father still be driving? It's like, well, sometimes the answer is an obvious no, based upon like even an office evaluation. But most of the time, it's like, well, we could send them for a driving evaluation. We could put them behind the wheel of a car. We can have them do a driving simulator and see if they run over virtual kids, and then we'll know, right? Then we'll objectively know what they really are capable of and what their risks are and their reflexes, et cetera. It's the same thing. I would just evaluate everybody individually. I wouldn't say, oh, you're 70, you can't drive anymore, even if you're perfectly healthy. It's the same thing. So no hard and fast age limits. That's ageism, in my opinion. Some people are super agers. Some people do not develop any of the signs that most people develop as they age. Their brains look great. They don't really atrophy. They don't get the tangles and stuff that most people get as they age. So maybe someone's a super ager. Who knows? Maybe they took care of themselves. If you are a healthy, my mother-in-law is like 96 and in perfect health.
She can kick Steve's ass.
She's amazing. Sure, she's not as energetic and everything as she was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But I mean, she's a fully capable woman at 96, living independently. She's still working.
Yep.
She is working. She's a piano teacher. She's still teaching. She is, she's managing her house all by herself, and it's amazing. So no hard and fast age limit. It's got to be individual assessment.
If you enjoyed this program, we'll be here every Wednesday, starting somewhere around 12 noon Eastern time. I'll be talking, and then Steve will join right when he gets out of his work, somewhere around 12:30 to 1 o'clock. I really enjoyed this conversation. Again, any people listening to this out there, and aliens, if any aliens are listening to this, if you have information that you think that we need to make us understand things better in any way, right? Yep. I mean, I am 100% open to looking into any information that you guys want to send our way. I am learning a lot about the U.S. government, and I have been for years now. I mean, we're going back a ways, but it's unbelievable how complicated government is.
Yeah.
Just understanding how a bill is passed.
Didn't you watch that?
I was a bill, yeah. No, but it's super.
Just a bill.
It's simple, but it does tell the story. But it is complicated because there are lots of if-thens to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just that alone, which so many people don't understand, that process of how it works. And again, you go on Facebook and you'll see people who make statements, and you'll be like, well, that's, let me explain to you how this bill process passing works. And then they'll say, you're wrong. Okay. All right. Well, the U.S. government, you could read the Constitution, and there's an amazing amount of information on the web to teach you how whatever government that you happen to be living under, how they function, and it's good to know. It's good to know. It's helped me understand things. It's helped me understand, the subtleties, which is very important as well. Like, why the hell isn't this bill passing? It's a simple question. Well, the answer is, 20 pages that you have to read. But once you get there, it really opens your eyes.
Well, for example, like right now, the Senate passed a bill providing funding for like Ukraine and Taiwan, et cetera. And a majority of people in the House would vote for it, except it hasn't come up for a vote.
Yeah, because
one guy. So how has that happened? That one guy can keep a bill coming up from a vote? It basically has veto power over
Speaker of the House,
entire legislative branch of government.
There is a way around it. It's difficult, but there is a way around it.
But it is difficult, as you say. So it's complicated, yeah. And this is a separate argument. We're not experts, but there's a lot of people who argue that our Senate and Congress are broken, that the internal rules make it difficult for them to actually govern. And we'll see. Our government may shut down this weekend because the House can't pass the funding bill.
Yep.
That's, I think, a pretty hard and fast piece of evidence about the dysfunction of our legislative body.
I've said this many times, but it's a really interesting fact that I learned. So, what's her name? Koki. What was that that journalist named Cokie
Cokie
Roberts.
Roberts?
Cokie Roberts.
Yeah.
Both of her parents were senators.
Yeah.
And this was back in the 50s. And her parents told her that back in the 50s, when we were in the Senate, that we would fight like hell when we were in the chamber.
Yeah.
And they would be arguing for what they believe in and everything. But afterwards, they were all friends. They would all go out to
Yeah.
dinner. Their families would mingle. Like, Republicans and Democrats actually got along because both sides knew that the other side cared, just cared for different things, right? Today, we have an adversarial government in the United States. One side more than the other, I might add, because Biden is clearly wanting to work with the Republican Party to pass bills and to make some progress. But when you have governments who absolutely will only vote for whatever their team
It's
votes for,
The difference is that more and more recently, it's gone from, as you say, we have common ground. We all believe in democracy, but you have some policy decisions. We disagree on policy too. It's gone from that disagreeing on policy to the other side are evil pedophiliacs who are trying to destroy the country, and that doesn't leave any wiggle room for negotiation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Although they still, on some issues, will just negotiate like normal, though. So I think it's mostly performative because I don't know how much they
I agree.
really believe it.
This past bill, the border bill, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm talking to people online, and they're like, "What? That bill should have focused just on the U.S. border. Why'd they have to put in stuff for Ukraine and Israel and all this shit?" And I'm like, "Well, all right, let's slow down. Let me explain to you how this process works. A bill isn't just about one thing. A bill is a negotiation. One side wants something very strongly, right? So in this case, the Republican Party was crying about border policy.
We will
border
give
policy.
you the border policies you want if you give us funding for Ukraine.
Exactly. That's
how
what
it works.
happened. It was a negotiation that they have to come to an agreement on. So they get what they want. They negotiate. The other side gets some things that they want. They don't all get exactly what they want, right? It isn't a freaking child's Christmas list where I want these 10 toys and your parents get them. It's like you get some of what you want, you get some of what you want, and there's the bill.
Democracy is a compromise where everyone's unhappy.
Right.
But at the end of the day, everyone should be equally unhappy. That means you did a good job.
The lead author was arguably one of, if not the most conservative Republicans in the U.S. government.
Yeah.
I forgot his
Langford.
name. Langford, right? Guy is very religious, and he's super, super conservative. And when you listen to what he said about the Republicans not passing the bill, it was genius. He was literally like, this is exactly what we all have been complaining about for years. This is we all want this. Like,
we got it. We're never going to be better than this.
never going to get this opportunity again because the Democrats have a really important thing to them. Okay, so the Republicans don't want to help Ukraine, but the Democrats really do.
Most Republicans do. It's really just a minority. But anyway.
Yeah, but I'm talking in the government.
I'm
so
talking about it in the government too. It's just we're living under the tyranny of the minority.
Exactly.
Right now.
When a bill like this doesn't get passed, where both sides are actually pretty happy about doing it, like they both want it, and then it gets completely cut, right? That is because there is outside motivation. That is because the wheels of government have stopped turning. Because
but in that case, we know exactly what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Trump said, no, kill this bill, I don't want it, and that was it.
Yeah,
and
'cause
then Mitch McConnell said, well, the politics have changed.
Yep. Thanks, Mitch. Thanks, man. Freaking 1 month before you drop fucking dead. Thank you so much for doing what's right for your country. Thank you so much. You really did a solid.
Not getting back into the rant.
He really, that.
I was wondering.
Me too. Me too.
I was wondering if Mitch, like, out the door.
Yeah,
was
he's like,
gonna
I'm leaving, so fuck you. I'm going to do what's right.
Nope. He's to be he's a partisan cynic.
Well, he's still
till the
sticking
end.
around for a while. Right?
Yeah, I know, but what was he going to do? Run again in 4 years? Whatever. Come on.
Oh my God. Okay.
All right, should we do a couple TikTok videos?
Yes, please, God.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go.
Okay. Well, so we're not going to do a YouTube, I guess, right?
I could probably pull it out of
You
what we
pull
did.
from this?
Yeah.
Yeah, the confirmation bias part.
There
Yes.
was a good part where just Steve was talking. And
Yeah.
we'll just use
That's
that. I'm
fine.
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So hey everybody, it was great talking to you. I really appreciate the wonderful dialogue in the chat here, guys. Like, it was good. There was no hostility. Everybody seemed to have an open mind. I hope people felt like they got something out of this. This is what it's supposed to be. This is the internet when it's working right here, right? It's like, if you have anyone that's been reading this, It's great. It's really good. You know, I feel positive about this.
Chat did say Steve for dictator 2025.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know. I don't even.
I would be a benign dictator.
Sure
I
you would be.
He's
Sure you
gonna
would
ban
be.
mushrooms though.
Would you get the neurological exam?
What's that?
Would you get the neurological
Oh,
exam?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, nothing to fear from an objective neurological.
All right, guys. Not that I think many of you are in the Dallas area, but if you are in Dallas, we have 2 shows coming up. There's still seats available. Evan and I talked to the venue today, and the guy was very excited by how many tickets we sold for the extravaganza.
The extravaganza, yeah.
He was like, "Whoa!" Like, kind of like, "What do you guys got going on? Like, what's going? What are you
This is
doing?"
unusual for them. That
Yeah.
we actually are selling tickets.
Yeah, like for this deep though, like we're filling the place. We also have 2 shows coming up in Colorado. We have the 1000th.
I can't resist. Hang on. Someone
Yeah.
says Steve knows how to cheat the neurological exam. Here's something that's interesting. The neurological exam is designed so that you can't cheat it. And if you try to cheat it, that's a finding unto itself. Like we note the person is trying to cheat the neuro exam. You can't do it, right? Anyway, that's just it's interesting aside. When neurologist, I had to answer that. That's a part of what the exam is designed to know how much effort you're making. For example, that doesn't mean like you can't tank your own performance. You
could
in
fake
certain
it.
ways.
But
you
there's
can't
certain
really
there's-
fake it.
there's
There's a lot.
certain-
We have ways of knowing.
There's certain neurological things that you can't fake.
There are certain things you absolutely cannot fake.
Yeah.
There are certain tells where we can objectively determine that you are trying to, and it doesn't even have to be conscious, just that what we're seeing is not a hard neurological deficit, that there's an element of effort involved, whether you're conscious of it or not. So that's built into the exam. It's built into the exam. You can't really cheat it.
And I'll leave
You certainly can't cheat it to make yourself look better.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
I will leave you with this thought. Imagine working for Steve. That's all I'm going to say. Imagine having this guy as your fucking boss. Imagine that.
Imagine what
Who
a
could-
nirvana that
Who
would
could
be.
put up with that? Who
that's
could deal with
all
it? Steve's literally
Lollipops and puppies.
Steve will literally tell when we talk. He will throw logical fallacies out at me. Like, you can't say that. That's wrong. Logically, Jay, you're incorrect. It's like forget it. All right, I am finally out of here. Hey, I brought over the lanyard straps. They're over there.
All right, good.
And the posters. You and I got to pack. I'll help you
Yeah.
next week. We'll do it next week.
Yeah. You have to get the coins yet?
Not yet.
I want to see them.
Real
Don't
quick,
see 'em.
Why is it
did
so
you get my
simple?
email? I need you to pay that.
I did.
payment.
Did you get my email where it said I did?
I
it?
didn't. I was
Yeah,
working.
did.
All right, you paid it. Good.
Yeah,
All right,
it's
we're done.
It is done. Yes.
Goodbye. What happened, Ian?
The camera zoomed in on Steve's face. Like crazy.
Extreme
On TikTok.
close up.
I was like, wait a minute.
I'm ready for my close up, Mr.
Close up,
Ian.
Mr. Demure. Okay, thank you, Olivia.
Should we talk about what I'm doing?
Oh yeah, which ones do you want to do?
I think I want to do the psychiatry neurology.
I knew
one.
that. Yeah, I figured that was a good one.
I mean, it's kind of in my
it's
sweet
like,
spot.
I know. I was like, I saw that. I was like, come on.
And the near-death experience one.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know. Nothing else really was.
I know. They're all like the bottomless pit is like it's just bullshit.
I'm
It's like,
thinking
there's
about the
no-
bottomless pit, but I mean, we could do a really short one, like it doesn't exist.
That would be fun.
There's no bottomless pit.
There is no
That
bottomless
won't.
pit.
There's no bottomless pit, and the whole and Mel's pit itself doesn't
Specifically.
even exist.
Yeah.
Like they said, a team of 30 people out there. I thought they were going to say like the team of 30 people to investigate the pit,
Yeah.
but they were just sent to find it, and they couldn't find it.
I was like, I guess there's not much to check on. See you later.
And you notice that the video shows like 30 different pits.
Yeah. Right.
Like pick one.
Probably AI generated too. I mean,
From all these different angles. There's one fucking.
yeah,
Where is
the
it?
pit?
Google Maps where it is.
So we can make a fun one out of
All
that.
right,
I
bye,
guess.
Jay. All right, yeah, we'll do that one.
All
That'll
right.
be fun. Yeah, because the other stuff is. I don't know. All right.
Jay has some political opinions.
A few. We got smacked on TikTok, I think 4 times. That like the pop-up said, "Learn more about U.S. elections." Like, thanks TikTok. Okay, so
Were you shown this is a fantastic question.
You're
Whoops.
gonna ask that one.
You can say no.
Hold on.
Another
Shush,
mystery.
Shush. All right, we got it. What part of this do you want to do? Just the beginning part?
Yeah,
Of
I mean,
this
it's hard to know. I just need him saying something like one sentence about neurology and psychiatry being the same. And he says it a few times in a few different ways. Any one of them would be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Wait, what is happening here? Do. Screen share grid. There we go. There, now everybody can see that.
This guy's a psychiatrist, right?
Yes, I believe he is. Yeah, that's why he's like bringing up the whole thing.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get his name real quick. I forget what it was. Press row. I don't know what his actual name is. So let's just say this guy. Okay, let me. Oh, I have to stop and let this remux real quick so we can just talk to chat. He has tall buildings behind him. I believe him. Yep. Thank you, chatter.
Mm-hmm.
That's
a
how
good
that
heuristic.
works. Yeah, that's a good measure. That was a live rage quit. Yeah, he did. Oh, we're no longer talking about the shmooshmeshmeshmeshms, so we can. It got removed. Anybody? Any chat? Let's see. Politics are important. If you care about being this for the idea. Okay, thank you so much for the chat.
Oh, we're not non-political.
Yeah.
We are just politically. We are non-partisan.
Yeah.
We try to be objective and not take sides.
Especially in the
politically.
podcast.
Yeah, especially on the podcast.
Here we're a little.
There's a little bit more freewheeling.
We
Freewheeling.
can't, mostly because we can't edit live.
Yeah.
Other
See, he
than
does
us
this when we're doing the
yelling at
podcast.
Jay.
I'm just like, edit.
Right.
You know.
Everybody's like, I've never heard Jay speak this passionately. It's like, well, you haven't heard him in person, then I guess, because he gets passionate. Any other questions? Sorry, it's about halfway through. So, any other questions if you got? Osteopath on YouTube. I mean, we talked about osteopaths before.
Yeah, we have.
It's like they're, I guess, fine, right?
They're fine.
now.
I'll give you the 2-second version while you're doing whatever you're doing over there, Ian.
Yeah.
So about 100 years ago, 120 years ago, 1910, the Flexner Report came out saying, oh, we need to make medical schools more scientific and more like European schools. And half the medical schools closed or consolidated or whatever. And we had real science-based standards then imposed on medical education and the practice of medicine. It was great. And at that time, the medical establishment basically went to osteopaths and said, hey, why don't you join us? This is an oversimplification, but just to tell you, but basically what happened was join us in adhering to these scientific standards and we'll all be one big happy family. And the osteopath said, sure, we'll be science-based. And so they did. And so osteopaths are basically the same thing as MDs, like ODOs. And they often go to the same residencies. They essentially get the same education after medical school. And so essentially they're the same at this point in time. A little bit, some different traditional things, but that's it. They also went to the chiropractors and said, hey, give up the pseudoscience and be science, agree to adhere to these scientific standards and we'll make you part of mainstream medicine. And chiropractors said, nerds. They said, nope, no thank you. We hate you guys. We're going to stick with what we're doing. Yeah. And so they remain pseudoscientists to this day. That's the short version, kind of the, Grimm's fairy tale version of what happened, but essentially true. So DOs, okay. Chiropractors, not so much.
In a way, they've kind of been successful in that because they promote such pseudoscience. Like they are successful financially.
Financially,
I mean,
sure.
like not successful, like in their outcomes necessarily.
Yeah.
But, okay, here we go. Let me start recording.
Yeah, I'm talking about American osteopaths. I'm not sure. I don't have personal knowledge of other countries.
All right, we are rolling, and so I'll just roll it from the beginning. Let me know when you want me to stop.
All right.
This is a fantastic question, and it's something I think about daily. Let's say tomorrow, we discovered the antibody that causes schizophrenia, and we know exactly how to treat it. It's with steroids. Is schizophrenia now under neuro's purview, or is it immunology's purview? Like, does Room handle it now because it was actually an antibody the whole time? That's basically what happened with NMDA encephalitis. All cognitive functions are rooted in neurologic functions. So all psych disorders are extensions of neurologic dysfunction. I think back in the day when we couldn't...
You want me to get that last sentence of his, like all psych, or all neurological psych, or whatever?
Yeah.
Vice versa. Whatever he said. Okay, let me just do a little bit of this. Bloop. Okay. And all right, we're rolling.
Do I need to do the clickety clack?
Okay, that's fine.
I agree. That is a fascinating question. I've often thought about that myself. I am a neurologist, so I'm coming at this from the other end of the spectrum. And it is interesting to note historically that neurology and psychiatry have intertwined roots. In Europe, neurology essentially evolved out of psychiatry as a discipline. I'm board certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. It's the same board. It's just if you're a neurologist, it's 80% neuro and 20% psych. And if you're a psychiatrist, it's 80% psych and 20% neuro. Because there's obviously a lot of overlap between the two. The mind is the brain, right? There isn't this clean distinction between psychology and neurology. They're basically the same, part of the same system, right? So, but his question is, when is an entity like schizophrenia considered to be a psychiatric illness versus a neurological illness? And if we discover a neurological mechanism for schizophrenia, would that suddenly mean that it would be treated by neurologists? That's an interesting question. I think the answer is mostly no, and this is the reason why. It's because psychiatrists treat psychiatric symptoms, whether or not those symptoms are neurological, right? But if there is a treatable underlying neurological cause, the neurologists would treat that, even if at the same time a psychiatrist is treating the psychiatric symptoms. So if, for example, schizophrenia were discovered to be, and it is basically a neurological issue, we could see differences in the brains, between people who have schizophrenia, people who don't have schizophrenia. There are different subtypes of schizophrenia that we could identify by the way their brains are functioning on functional MRI scans, et cetera, not just by their clinical symptoms, but it's still completely managed by psychiatry. Interestingly, if we find, however, that somebody who presents with a schizophrenia-like syndrome, right, they're having symptoms of hallucinations and delusions, et cetera, that makes them look like they have schizophrenia, that can be caused by a brain tumor, right? And I had a patient once who had a brain tumor, and we took out I sent him to the neurosurgeons, yet another specialty, right? The surgeons took out the brain tumor, and his schizophrenia was cured. He never had schizophrenia. He had a brain tumor that caused a schizophrenia-like syndrome, right? So in that case, yes, that would be treated by neurology and neurosurgery, right? But if you have schizophrenia, because that's just the way your brain is wired up, even if we can tell that it's being caused by a brain issue, the psychiatrists are experts in the medications that we use and how to apply them, and the psychological aspects of schizophrenia, and the overall management of it as a psychiatric illness, right? Even if the underlying cause is medical or neurological. So there is actually, in practice, there's a complicated relationship. So, and it exists not just in the gap between psychiatry and neurology. So oftentimes, for example, I might see a patient who has a neurological manifestation of a systemic medical disease, right? So they may have lupus, and lupus is a systemic disease that is treated by internal medicine doctors and rheumatologists. But that their lupus may affect their brain. And when it does, then a neurologist has to treat it, because we treat the brain aspects of it. Although I still let the rheumatologist treat the lupus, I just treat the neurological manifestations if they need symptomatic treatment or whatever. And I help them monitor the neurological activity, which informs the rheumatologists about how well their treatments are doing, for example. So the answer really probably is yes to both. If there was something inflammatory to manage, then whoever had the expertise to manage the inflammatory process would do it. If there was something neurological to manage, then a neurologist would manage that. But if there are psychiatric symptoms, the psychiatrists are going to manage that, right? If they're delusional and psychotic, I'm not going to manage that as a neurologist, because I don't manage psychosis, even if there's a neurological cause. I'll treat the underlying neurological cause, and if the psychosis goes away, great. If not, then I consult psychiatry to help me manage the psychosis, because that's their expertise. So I think that's the best way to look at it. You have medical, neurological, psychiatric, illnesses, entities that overlap with each other. and different specialists will manage different aspects of it depending on their training and expertise. So I don't think psychiatry is going to go away. Even if we discovered the true underlying neurological cause for all psychiatric illness, we would still need people who know how to diagnose and manage those manifestations, right? The psychiatric end of the spectrum. And we would probably just end up co-managing that, where we have a medical doctor managing the medical aspects, a neurologist managing the neurological aspects, and a psychiatrist managing the psychiatric aspects. But the underlying question is well taken. There is this complicated, often subtle, difference, or another way to look at it is extensive overlap between neurology and psychiatry. And that overlap changes when we learn more, discover more about the actual mechanism of an illness, and not just categorizing it based upon its symptomatic manifestations. So fascinating question.
Very good.
Very nice, very beautiful.
Very good. Very fresh. Okay. Any questions in the chat as I'm setting up the next one? Go ahead, feel free. That was Press Row, I think his name is. Let me see, I'll just show it to y'all real quick. Oop, maybe not. There you go. Press Row. Press Row.
What are we doing?
So the next one is, we have the near-death experience or the bottomless pit. Maybe near-death?
Yeah, so the NDE.
Okay. So we'll get this one. Yeah, okay, very good. All right, start recording. Hold on one second. Start recording. All right, here we go.
Were you shown the future at any time?
Ugh, you're gonna ask that one.
You can say no, or we can skip over it, or I can just not include it. But
I'll share it, and then you decide. I don't want to scare anybody. That's my whole thing,
Okay.
and I do talk about it. So I'm at a dinner party with friends who had just moved to Vancouver. I found it hard to breathe.
She has
I
a
felt
long
lot of
wind-up
pressure in
before
my
she gets
chest
to
and thought, well, maybe
talking
I
about the
suddenly got
actual
sick.
near-death
I didn't know
experience
what to
itself.
think,
Do we
be
want to
honest
jump
with
to
you.
that? Or
You could either jump to
thought
that
it
or
was
just
so bad
That
that I
beginning
just
part.
use just that
going to
beginning
their
part. We don't. This part is
bathroom.
not
There was
Yeah.
no
not helpful.
moon even swirling.
Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of
With
going into the
different
tunnel of
colors
light is
of
probably a
gray
better piece.
and sparks of a brighter light. And so I'm watching this, and now it's closer and closer, and I'm watching it, it's coming above me. But now I'm ascending upwards. I have no control over that whatsoever, but now I'm suddenly in it. And now I'm starting to get nervous because I don't know what that is, I have absolutely no idea. I put my arms and legs out because I thought, well, if I could touch the sides, maybe I could stop myself from going up, because I was trying to control the situation. I did not want to be out of control with this, so, but it expanded on me. I definitely started to freak out a bit because that really meant I had absolutely zero control. I had absolutely zero understanding on what was happening.
Good, stop it
and
there.
I didn't know what this was. But
Yeah, I'll get that absolute zero control. I'll cut some of it.
No, the
together,
zero
but-
understanding what was happening is also a good line.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll do that one too. I like when people misspell atheist. It's like atheist. It's like, come on. Get a program. Okay, so we got that going. All right, we're rolling.
So near-death experience, this is something I've been exploring and writing about for many years. How do we interpret these stories? Now, I don't doubt that these people have had the experiences that they are recounting. I'm not saying that they're lying or that they don't have this memory of having had this experience. The real question is how do we interpret it? How do we interpret the fact that after somebody went through, being dead for a short period of time or having a cardiac arrest or some kind of extreme medical situation, that they have had this kind of experience where they feel like they're floating above their body sometimes, or they have a life review, or they see a light, or maybe they encounter beings, or maybe even people that they knew who were passed on. There's a lot of common elements to these near-death experiences, although they do vary by culture. People usually have the near-death experience that's most typical for their culture, for their religion or their belief system. But how do we interpret that? There's two basic ways to interpret it, right? One is that this is all just something that's happening inside the brain, right? This is what happens when the brain is under extreme stress, is experiencing oxygen deprivation, etc. Or the other way is to interpret this to say that this is an actual out there in the real world experience, that it's some kind of a paranormal, supernatural, spiritual life after death experience. How would we know the difference between the two things? We could ask a couple of questions here. One is it possible that this is a neurological brain experience? And the answer to that is clearly yes. It's absolutely possible. There is nothing that has been clearly documented with any near-death experience that cannot be explained as just a neurological phenomenon. This is what happens when the brain is dying and somebody is brought back from the brink. And the other thing is, we don't really know that the experiences that people remember occurred while they were having cardiac arrest. This could be the kind of thing that you would experience in the days following events like that, when you are slowly recovering, but before you regain full consciousness, right? When you wake up with these memories, but it may be 3 days later or whatever, you don't know when those memories formed. And so we can't really say for sure that they happened like when the person was getting CPR in the emergency room. But it doesn't necessarily matter in most cases, but it's important to realize we don't know. We just know that after the fact, people have these memories, but they're very consistent with what we know happens sometimes during oxygen deprivation or extreme stress. For example, pilots undergoing high Gs, before they black out, they experience a lot of the same kinds of phenomena, like out-of-body experience, etc. These are the kinds of things that happen to the brain. We also know that there is circuitry in the brain that if you disrupt that circuitry, you have these kinds of experiences. Feeling like one with the universe, for example, anybody could have that experience if we give you the right drug or turn off the right circuit in your brain. So they're extremely plausible as just purely neurological experiences. We could also ask, well, is there any objective evidence that these were experiences that were happening out there in the world rather than just inside the person's brain? And the answer to that question is no, there isn't any objective evidence that these experiences are real out there in the world. There have been attempts to document that there are. For example, there was one study in which they placed objects or placards or cards with words on them on high shelves out of view of anybody in an emergency room. But if you were, of course, actually floating up by this ceiling, as many people report when they remember these out-of-body experiences, these near-death experiences, you would be able to see it. No one has ever been able to report having seen such things. They were not able to document that they had information they could only have if they were actually floating outside of their body, for example. So zero objective evidence. So this is where we are. We have, again, you can't know for certain, what exactly happened to people who have these memories. But we could say is they are totally explainable as neurological experiences, and there is no evidence, objective evidence, that they were happening outside the body, right? That these were actual real experiences. What about reports like in this case with Heather of saying that, well, she was given visions of the future? It's like, okay, but she wasn't given any information about the future that in any way is testable or objective, right? There's going to be wars and protests and conflicts in the future. That's kind of an easy call, right? That's not actual prediction or actual evidence. She was shown how energy works is another claim. It's like, yeah, but in a very vague kind of way of like, things are connected with energy. Like that's the kind of freewheeling kind of delusional stuff that you think when you're half asleep or delusional or, whatever, your brain's not fully functioning. Not really any kind of a concrete piece of information or knowledge. Again, nothing testable. So when people come out of NDEs with messages from beyond or whatever, any kind of information about this, visions about one thing or another, they're always these kind of vague things, not hard objective or testable pieces of information. So again, we're left with no objective information to say that these episodes, these experiences, are anything other than just the brain under stress in these types of situations. So that is how I think an objective, scientific, a neuroscientist, it would interpret those experiences. The fact that she's an atheist, I don't know what her belief system really was before this, but it's irrelevant in any case. You don't need to be a true believer in order to have a near-death experience. Again, it's probably a neurological experience. It doesn't matter what you believed before you underwent that experience. So this one episode, this one anecdote, doesn't change the overall picture of all the information we have about NDEs and what they probably are.
All right, that's good.
All right, let's do the whole.
Let's do the whole. Here we go. Is chat ready for what they're about to see or not see?
You will freak out.
You're freaking out, man. Okay, let's get up here. Bada-boom. Doom. There we go. Let me just stop that. Wish I could say thank you for everything. Yes, absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Ian, it shocked the whole world.
It sure did. I remember hearing about it. Another mystery buried. I like that little turn of phrase. It's like a hole's not supposed to be buried. Okay, let me start recording there. Start recording here. Alrighty, we're rolling. Let me hit play. Oh, maybe not. There we go. There it is.
Buried deep in the hills of eastern Washington keeps resurfacing. A bottomless pit said to be a pathway to the paranormal. KOMO4's Denise Whitaker heads east in search of the hole.
This landscape has no natural means to make a very deep hole. And if it was made artificially, there's got to be a heck of a lot of waste someplace that was dug out of that hole.
For years, the mystery of Mel's Hole has captivated the public. Yet despite numerous attempts to uncover its secrets, all efforts have seemed in vain. This mysterious hole has been a source of intense curiosity and speculation from the moment of its discovery, leaving many to ponder what truly lies at its bottom. Fortunately, scientists have recently achieved a breakthrough, revealing a terrifying phenomenon hidden within the depths of Mel's Hole. What secrets are concealed within its dark confines? And what do these findings mean for humanity? Brace yourself, because what you're about to hear will blow your mind.
Yeah, we could probably stop there.
That's enough of that. They really had to do the edit where they said in search of it at the bottom and then show somebody's butt. I was like, okay, great. Good job. Good job, editor. Plus the AI voice. It's always the worst. All right, we're rolling.
So Mel's Hole. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to respond to this one because it's clearly just made up clickbait. But it's a funny story. Mel's Hole doesn't exist. It does not even real. There's no evidence that it's actually out there. It's just an urban legend. It's a local, regional urban legend that who knows how it arose and took on a life of its own. And that's it. Famously, like 30 researchers went out there to, and I was reading about this, like, oh, they went out there to investigate the hole. It's like, no, they were just looking for it and they didn't find it. Apparently it doesn't exist. They couldn't even find the hole. You'll note in that video, they show a video of many different holes. They should just pick one. There isn't a single hole there. And of course the claims themselves are implausible in terms of like how deep it's supposed to be, et cetera, just geologically impossible. But natural sinkholes do exist, and that is a known phenomenon. They're not as deep as this one is supposed to be. There's nothing, paranormal or strange or shocking or mind-blowing about it. But this is a good example of just an urban legend that took on a life of its own that has really no basis in reality whatsoever.
All right, cool.
All right, that was a short one.
That was a short one. That's a good one.
Yeah. All right.
I think that's it.
That's it.
That's it,
Another
everybody.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we will for most Wednesdays. Sometimes we're away, but for most Wednesdays we'll do we'll be streaming usually from like 12:30 to what time is it now?
2:30.
2:30. Okay.
Yeah, we try
Couple hours.
Yeah, sometimes we go early a little bit just to get everybody warmed up. But yeah, we've been more consistent with this honestly than I think the Friday live stream.
Yeah, Fridays can be challenging because if you have anything going on the weekend, like the Friday is kind of blown.
This Friday coming up probably won't happen because isn't it Easter? Is it Easter or is it?
That's next
Oh,
weekend.
that's next weekend.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
so
this
maybe
Friday,
we'll do this Friday.
maybe we might be able to do this Friday.
All right, we got to text.
Yeah.
Jay. Jay's always a hard one.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.
Have a good week.
On the flip flop. Go to the end screen. Where's that end screen? That's sort of the end screen. Okay, whatever. We'll go here. There you
There
go.
we go.
Skepticsguide.org. All right. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Ian.
No problem.